For 2 decades, my dad called me his biggest regret and chose my brother over me every time. Then, he showed up begging after I made it big. Hey, Reddit, buckle up because this one's a long time coming. For 20 years straight, my father made it crystal clear I was the mistake he never wanted, while my brother was the golden child who could literally do no wrong. Then karma came knocking, and suddenly I'm the favorite son. Here's how it all went down. I'm 28 male, the oldest of 2 brothers. My younger brother Tyler, 25 male, has been the apple of our dad's eye since the literal day he was born. Me? I was the accident that derailed dad's entire future and ruined everything he'd been working toward. He told me this directly, multiple times. Starting when I was about 8 years old, my parents got pregnant with me when they were both 19. Dad was supposed to go to college on a full baseball scholarship to a Division II school in Ohio, had serious dreams of making it to the minor leagues, maybe even the majors if things went his way. Then, Mom got pregnant with me, and suddenly Dad's entire carefully planned future evaporated like morning fog on a summer day. He dropped out of community college where he'd been taking general education courses before the scholarship was set to start that fall. Got a job at a manufacturing plant making automotive parts. Worked his way up to shift supervisor over the years, but it was never what he wanted. And he made absolutely sure I knew that every single day of my childhood. The plant work was brutal. 12-hour shifts in a loud factory where the temperature hit 90 degrees in summer. Dad would come home exhausted, smelling like metal shavings and machine oil, his hands permanently stained with grease that never quite washed out. He'd sit in his recliner with this look on his face. Not quite anger, not quite sadness, just this hollow resignation that his life had taken a wrong turn he couldn't reverse. My earliest memory of Dad is him yelling at Mom about how their lives would be different if they'd been more careful. I was maybe 5 years old, playing with toy cars on the living room floor while they fought in the kitchen. Didn't understand what they were arguing about at the time, but I knew somehow it involved me. The way Mom would glance at me with guilt in her eyes. The way Dad's voice would drop when he noticed I was listening. The resentment wasn't subtle either. Dad would look at me sometimes with this expression like he was doing mental math in his head, calculating all the things he could have been doing if I didn't exist. Baseball games he could have played in front of scouts. Cities he could have lived in. Money he could have saved instead of spending on diapers and daycare and all the expensive things babies need. When I was 7, Tyler was born. That's when everything suddenly changed. See, by then Dad had adjusted to his life. He'd accepted that he wasn't going to be a professional athlete. He'd settled into his job at the plant and worked his way up to a position with better pay. He and Mom had been married for 7 years and had actually planned Tyler's arrival. They'd saved money, prepared the house, got excited about having another baby. This time around, Dad was actually ready to be a father. The difference in how he treated us was night and day. Tyler's baby photos are professional studio shots in matching outfits with Mom and Dad beaming at the camera like they'd won the lottery. Mine are blurry Polaroids where you can barely see my face because Mom was still learning how to use the camera and nobody cared enough to retake them. Tyler's baby book is meticulously filled out with first words, first steps, first everything documented like he was some kind of scientific experiment. Mine has my name and birth date filled in, then empty pages for the rest. When Tyler was old enough to walk, Dad started teaching him baseball in the backyard. Would spend hours out there every evening and weekend showing him how to grip a bat properly, how to throw a fastball with the right wrist snap, proper batting stance at the plate. I'd watch from my bedroom window, wondering why Dad never wanted to teach me those things when I'd asked years earlier. One time when I was about 10, I asked if I could join them for batting practice. Dad looked at me like I'd suggested something completely ridiculous and said Tyler was still learning the basics. Maybe when he got better and needed more challenging pitching, I could throw to him for practice. Translation: you're not worth teaching, but you can be useful as equipment when we need you. That became the pattern for pretty much everything. Tyler got attention, instruction, encouragement, one-on-one time. I got assigned chores and told to stay out of the way. School events really highlighted the stark difference in treatment. When Tyler had kindergarten graduation, which, let's be honest, isn't really a graduation, it's just kids walking across a gym, Dad took the afternoon off work, showed up with a video camera, and recorded the entire ceremony. He was right up front, waving and giving Tyler thumbs up, staying after to talk with the teachers about Tyler's incredible progress in learning his ABCs. When I graduated middle school with honors, actual academic achievement, not just finishing kindergarten, Dad said he couldn't get off work and didn't even ask how it went when he got home that night. Just walked in, grabbed dinner, and asked Tyler about his baseball practice. I could have walked across that stage naked, and Dad wouldn't have known because he wasn't there. Tyler's first little league game? Dad was there an hour early to help set up the field and drag the bases. Stayed after to talk with coaches about Tyler's natural talent and advanced baseball IQ, even though Tyler had struck out twice. Bought ice cream on the way home to celebrate, even though Tyler's team lost 7-2. The whole evening was about Tyler being part of a team and learning sportsmanship and all that parent stuff. My first high school football game where I actually played in the fourth quarter as a backup linebacker, Dad didn't come. Said he was tired from work, and football wasn't really his sport anyway. Never mind that I'd been excited all week about finally getting on the field. Never mind that I'd specifically asked him to be there. He was tired and football wasn't baseball, so it didn't matter. The excuses were always the same too. He was tired from work. He had things to do around the house. Football wasn't as interesting as baseball. Band concerts were too long. Academic competitions were boring. But baseball games for Tyler? Suddenly Dad had endless energy and interest. Suddenly he could take time off work. Suddenly sitting on metal bleachers for 3 hours was no problem at all. Mom tried to balance things out, bless her heart. She was working full-time as a dental assistant and didn't have enough hours in the day to make up for Dad's obvious favoritism. She'd come to some of my stuff when she could, always looking exhausted and guilty that Dad wasn't there. She'd apologize quietly, make excuses for him, promise he'd make the next one. He never did. "Your father loves you," she'd say every single time. "He just shows it differently." That's not showing love differently. That's not showing love at all. The verbal stuff got progressively worse as I got older and could actually understand what he was saying. Around 12 years old, Dad started making these comments about how I needed to justify my existence by being useful to the family. How Tyler was the son he'd actually wanted and planned for, while I was just the consequence of bad timing and worse decisions. One night at dinner when I was 13, I mentioned getting a B+ on a really difficult algebra test. Had studied for hours. The class average was a C-, and I was genuinely proud of pulling a B+. Dad's response was to turn to 8-year-old Tyler and say, "See how your brother settles for good enough? You'll do better than that. You'll aim for perfection." Tyler was 8, hadn't even taken an algebra test, probably didn't even know what algebra was. But Dad still used my actual accomplishment as a teaching moment for why Tyler should exceed me in every possible way. When I made the varsity football team sophomore year as a backup linebacker, which was actually impressive because sophomores rarely made varsity, Dad's reaction was to ask if they were short on players that year. Like the only way I could have made the team was if nobody else wanted to play. When Tyler made the traveling baseball team in 6th grade, which was basically just kids whose parents could afford the fees, Dad threw him a whole party and invited all the neighbors. The message was clear and absolutely consistent. Tyler's achievements mattered and deserved celebration. Mine were footnotes at best, embarrassments at worst. I dealt with it the way a lot of ignored kids do. I stopped trying to get Dad's attention and focused on becoming completely self-sufficient. Got my first real job at 15 washing dishes at a diner called Rosie's about 2 miles from our house. Saved every single penny I earned. Started planning my exit strategy from that house the literal second I turned 18. The job at Rosie's was tough work. Showed up at 5 p.m., worked until closing around midnight, washing hundreds of dishes in scalding hot water that turned my hands red and wrinkled. My fingers would be pruned by the time I got home. But I didn't complain because that money was my ticket out. Dad seemed actually relieved when I started working. One less expense he had to cover. Told me since I was earning money now, I should start contributing to household expenses. Started charging me $200 a month for rent as soon as I turned 16 and got my driver's license. Let me repeat that. My father charged his 16-year-old son rent to live in his own childhood home. Tyler never paid rent. Not when he turned 16. Not when he turned 18. Not when he was still living at home at 23 years old. But I had to contribute starting at 16 because apparently my existence was such a burden that I needed to start paying them back for the privilege of raising me. The financial double standard was absolutely constant. When my car broke down junior year, this beat-up Honda Civic I'd bought for $900 from a coworker's cousin, Dad said I'd have to figure it out myself since I had a job and should learn about car repairs. I ended up spending $300 I'd saved for college application fees to get the alternator replaced. When Tyler wanted a car for his 16th birthday, Dad co-signed a loan for a nearly new Ford Focus and helped make the monthly payments for the first year until Tyler got established. Tyler got established by totaling that Ford Focus 6 months later, driving too fast in the rain. Dad's reaction? Accidents happen. Let's get you something else. They bought him another car. College was the exact same story, just with bigger numbers that made the inequality even more obvious. I got into a decent state school with some scholarship money covering about half tuition, but I still needed substantial help with room and board and books and all the other expenses that add up when you're trying to survive as a college student. Asked Dad if he could help with anything, even just a couple $1,000s to get me started. His response? I was 18 now and needed to learn financial responsibility. Said taking out loans would teach me the value of money and build character. Said he'd done me a favor by not helping because now I'd appreciate my education more. The mental gymnastics were impressive, so I took out student loans. Lots of them. Federal loans, private loans, whatever I could qualify for. Took out loans and worked 2 jobs simultaneously to cover living expenses that the loans didn't touch. Worked overnight shifts at a warehouse from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. loading trucks and moving pallets. Then, I'd go to morning classes running on pure adrenaline and exhaustion. Weekend shifts at a coffee shop from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. meant I basically never had a day off. Functioned on 4 hours of sleep most days, sometimes less. My roommate freshman year thought I was a ghost because I was never there when he was awake. I'd come back to the dorm at 8 a.m., sleep until noon, go to afternoon classes, study until my shift started, then do it all over again. The bags under my eyes were so dark, people asked if I was sick. Ate ramen and peanut butter sandwiches for probably 70% of my meals. Learned to make ramen interesting by adding whatever cheap vegetables were on sale. Frozen peas, canned corn, whatever. Peanut butter sandwiches on the cheapest white bread imaginable became my primary source of protein. My diet was approximately 60% carbs, 30% cheap protein, and 10% whatever vitamins I could get from the occasional banana. Wore the same 6 outfits over and over because I couldn't afford new clothes. Same 2 pairs of jeans alternating all week. Same 4 t-shirts in rotation. 1 decent shirt for presentations. My shoes literally had holes in the soles that I covered with duct tape because buying new ones meant choosing between shoes and textbooks. Watched other students go out on weekends, take spring break trips, join clubs and organizations. I couldn't afford any of it. Couldn't afford the dues, couldn't afford the time away from work, couldn't afford to be a normal college student doing normal college things. Tyler got into the same state school 3 years later with significantly worse grades and 0 scholarship money. His GPA was barely above the minimum admission requirement. His SAT scores were mediocre at best. He'd coasted through high school on Dad's constant excuses and Mom's enabling, never really applying himself to anything except baseball. Dad paid for everything without hesitation or conditions. Full tuition, every penny. Room and board in the newer dorms with air conditioning and private bathrooms. The premium meal plan with unlimited swipes. All his textbooks purchased new from the campus bookstore instead of used or rented. Even gave him $500 a month in spending money for going out with friends, buying whatever he wanted, living the actual college experience. Tyler joined a fraternity freshman year, $4,000 in dues that Dad paid without blinking. Went on spring break trips to Cancun and Miami that cost thousands more. Had a car on campus sophomore year, something most students couldn't afford. While I'd been eating ramen and working overnight, Tyler was living the college life that exists in movies and TV shows. When I asked why Tyler got a free ride while I had to take out $30,000 in loans that I'd be paying off for the next decade, Dad had his justification ready. Said Tyler had more potential, and it was worth investing in his future since he'd likely go on to do great things. Said I was already established with my engineering program and work history, so I didn't need help anymore. Said the loans would make me appreciate my degree more when I finally paid them off. Established. Potential. Appreciation. All these words that basically meant, Tyler is worth spending money on and you're not. I was a 21-year-old college student eating peanut butter sandwiches twice a day while working overnight shifts and going to classes exhausted. Tyler was 21 later and attending fraternity parties 3 nights a week with Dad's money. That was Dad's definition of us being in different positions that justified the completely unequal treatment. That's when I realized Dad wasn't ever going to see me as anything other than the mistake that derailed his life. Nothing I accomplished would matter, because in his eyes, I wasn't supposed to exist in the first place. I was a living reminder of everything he'd given up. So I stopped expecting anything from him. Stopped calling home except when Mom answered the phone. Stopped coming back for holidays unless Mom specifically asked, and even then I'd make excuses. Built a life that had absolutely nothing to do with Dad's approval, because I was never going to get it anyway. I graduated college with a degree in mechanical engineering, and a job offer already lined up before my final semester even ended. Got hired by a reputable manufacturing company in another state designing production equipment and automation systems for automotive assembly lines. The starting salary was decent. Nothing spectacular, but enough to finally feel like I could breathe financially for the first time in years. Packed up my beat-up Honda Civic with everything I owned, which fit in the car pretty easily since I didn't own much beyond clothes, a laptop, some engineering textbooks, and basic kitchen supplies, and moved 8 hours away without any fanfare. Barely even said goodbye beyond a quick text to Mom, letting her know I'd arrived safely. Started building the life I actually wanted, instead of trying to fit into the one Dad had decided I wasn't worthy of being part of. The job was good. Nothing glamorous, but solid pay around $45,000 to start with decent benefits and clear room for advancement if I worked hard. I could afford my own apartment without needing roommates to split rent. Could buy groceries and eat real meals instead of surviving on ramen and peanut butter. Could start making actual payments on those student loans instead of just watching the interest accumulate month after month while I struggled. Meanwhile, Tyler bounced around for several years after college, like a pinball in a machine. Got a business degree, but couldn't hold down a job for more than 6 months at a time. Tried selling insurance, hated it within 3 months and quit. Tried real estate, attended one training class and decided it wasn't for him. Worked at a car dealership selling sedans, got fired after 6 months for missing too many days and showing up late constantly. Every single failed job, Dad had ready-made excuses. The boss was unreasonable and didn't appreciate Tyler's potential. The insurance industry was struggling because of market conditions. Real estate required too much self-motivation, and Tyler needed more structure. The car dealership had impossible sales quotas that nobody could meet. Always someone else's fault. Always external circumstances. Never Tyler's responsibility. But when I changed jobs after 2 years to get a better position with more pay and better projects, Dad said I was being flaky and needed to learn commitment. Said job hopping looked bad on a resume. Said employers wanted loyalty. This from the same man who made excuses for Tyler quitting 3 different jobs in 18 months. By the time I was 25, I'd gotten recruited to a major aerospace company based in the Southwest. Good salary, great benefits, interesting work on projects that actually mattered. Started working on military contracts, defense systems, satellite components. Bought my first house. Small 2-bedroom starter home. But it was mine. No roommates, no landlord, just my name on the deed. Around the same time, Tyler moved back in with our parents after his girlfriend kicked him out of her apartment for not paying rent. He was 22 years old, unemployed for the 3rd time in as many years, and crashing in his old childhood bedroom playing video games 18 hours a day, while Dad kept insisting he was between opportunities and figuring out his path. I visited Mom for her birthday that year. First time I'd been home in almost 18 months because I'd been actively avoiding going back. Walked in and found Tyler on the couch in the same sweatpants he'd probably been wearing for 4 days, playing video games at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday. Asked what he was up to, and he said he was networking online and exploring entrepreneurial opportunities. He was playing Call of Duty with a bag of chips on his stomach and hadn't showered in what looked like multiple days based on his hair. Dad came home from work and immediately lit up seeing Tyler like someone had switched on a light bulb. Didn't even acknowledge me for the first 10 full minutes. When he finally said hello, it was just a quick nod before he went right back to asking Tyler about his job search and whether he'd heard back from any applications yet. That night at dinner, Dad went on and on about how proud he was of Tyler for taking his time to find the right opportunity instead of jumping at the first thing available and settling like some people do. Actually looked right at me when he said the settling part. I'd just been promoted to senior engineer, was making more money than Dad had ever earned in his entire career. Owned my own house while Tyler was unemployed and living in his childhood bedroom at 22. But somehow I was the one settling by Dad's logic. That was the last family dinner I attended for 2 full years. Then things started really changing in my favor. I got recruited by a major defense contractor operating out of Virginia. Huge salary bump. Nearly double what I'd been making. Stock options that would vest over 5 years. Company car. Moving expenses paid in full. The kind of job that gets your name mentioned in industry trade publications and conference programs. Started traveling for work constantly, meeting with military brass and government officials about weapon systems contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Attended Pentagon briefings. Reviewed classified specifications. The whole 9 yards. It was intense and stressful, but also incredibly validating to be trusted with that level of responsibility. Didn't tell my parents about any of it. Mom would occasionally hear through friends or distant relatives who'd seen something online and call to congratulate me. But I kept Dad on a strict information diet. He hadn't cared about my successes for the previous 25 years of my life. So why should he suddenly get to hear about them now? Tyler, meanwhile, was still finding himself at 24. Had moved back in with our parents for the third time after losing yet another job. Was working part-time at a sporting goods store folding t-shirts and restocking shelves, talking constantly about starting a business, flipping cars despite having zero money and zero mechanical knowledge about what made a car valuable. Dad was still making excuses for him like it was his full-time job. Tyler was entrepreneurial, had vision and ambition, just needed the right break to come along. Meanwhile, I was dismissed as the boring corporate engineer who'd chosen a safe, predictable path instead of taking risks and chasing dreams like Tyler allegedly was. The irony was completely lost on Dad that Tyler's biggest risk was betting on parental support lasting forever while contributing absolutely nothing. Then came the phone call that changed absolutely everything. I was 27 years old. Mom called me at work one Thursday afternoon, crying so hard I could barely understand what she was saying. Immediately made me think something terrible had happened. Turned out Dad had suffered a serious heart attack at the manufacturing plant. Collapsed on the factory floor during his shift. Not fatal, but serious enough to require emergency surgery and months of recovery afterward. I drove home that weekend, 8 hours straight through. Dad was still in the hospital recovering from the emergency procedure. Went to see him in the cardiac unit. He looked smaller than I remembered. Older. Tired. All that anger and resentment he'd carried around for decades had physically worn him down. He didn't apologize for anything. Didn't acknowledge the years of blatant favoritism and emotional cruelty. Just said he was glad I came and asked surface-level questions about my job. Small talk. Weather-level conversation. Like we were distant acquaintances catching up instead of father and son dealing with a life-threatening medical emergency. I kept the visit short and professional. Told Mom I'd help with medical bills if insurance didn't cover everything, then drove back to my life 8 hours away. The heart attack forced Dad into early retirement. Couldn't physically handle the demanding shift supervisor job anymore. His pension and disability payments covered basic living expenses, but their retirement situation was significantly tighter than they'd planned. Mom was still working at the dental office, but they were cutting expenses everywhere they could. Tyler still lived with them rent-free. Still wasn't contributing financially in any meaningful way. Still was pursuing his entrepreneurial dreams, which mostly involved watching business podcasts on YouTube and posting motivational quotes on social media about hustle culture and grinding while working 15 hours a week at the sporting goods store. 6 months after the heart attack, Dad called me directly for the first time in literally years. I almost didn't answer because I saw his name on the caller ID, and my immediate instinct was to decline it. "Hey," he said, voice awkward and uncertain. "How have you been?" "Fine. What do you need?" He stumbled through uncomfortable small talk for about a minute before finally getting to the actual point of the call. They were having serious financial trouble. Medical bills were piling up faster than they could pay them. Mom's hours had been cut at the dental office. Tyler was still looking for a good full-time opportunity. Could I help them out financially? The sheer audacity was absolutely breathtaking. 27 years of being treated like a burden and an unwanted mistake. And now he wanted money from me. "How much are we talking?" I asked. "Well, we're about $15,000 behind on various bills. The house payment is 3 months late, medical bills are probably another $8,000, and the credit cards we used for expenses are maxed out. How much has Tyler contributed to this?" Dead silence on the phone. "He's between jobs right now, you know that. And he's got his own expenses. He's trying to get his car flipping business started. So nothing. Tyler's contributed absolutely nothing to the household. That's not fair. He's in a different position than you are. You've got that big corporate job with the defense contractor. The job I paid for myself with student loans I'm still paying off. The career I built while Tyler got a completely free ride through college and still somehow couldn't figure out how to be a functioning adult." More uncomfortable silence. I just thought, family helps family out in tough times. The phrase actually made me laugh out loud. Actually laugh. Bitter and sharp and humorless. Family helps family. That's rich coming from you. Where was family when I was working 2 jobs to afford textbooks? Where was family when my car died and I had to figure it out completely alone? Where was family at my graduation, my promotion, any single moment in my life that actually mattered? I know I wasn't perfect. You weren't a father, not to me. You made it very clear for my entire childhood and adult life that I was the mistake that ruined your plans. So here's what I'm going to do. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I'm going to do exactly what you did for me. Figure it out yourself. I hung up before he could respond. Mom called about an hour later, crying harder than she'd cried when Dad had the heart attack. I told her calmly that I'd pay her medical bills directly if she sent me the statements. But I wasn't giving Dad a single penny. She could come stay with me if she wanted to leave him, but I was completely done pretending we were a functional family. She said I was being cruel and heartless. Maybe I was. But I learned cruelty from an absolute expert. The house went into foreclosure proceedings 3 months later. Mom and Dad had to move into a small 2-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of town. Tyler moved right along with them because he still had nowhere else to go and absolutely no money to live independently. My career kept climbing steadily upward. Got promoted to program director overseeing multiple major contracts. Was managing a team of 40 engineers working on a $500 million missile defense project. Got written up in industry journals and trade publications. Gave keynote presentations at engineering conferences. Everything Dad could have been proud of if he'd ever actually seen me as worthwhile, instead of as the accident that derailed his baseball dreams. Then came the event that brought absolutely everything to a head. I won a major industry achievement award from the National Defense Industrial Association. Huge deal in the aerospace and defense sector. Came with a formal ceremony at a hotel in Washington, D.C., national recognition in the industry, and a significant cash prize of $50,000. The kind of accomplishment that gets announced in press releases and mentioned in industry publications for months afterward. The day after the public announcement, Dad called my cell phone. I saw his name and almost sent it to voicemail out of habit. "Saw the news about your award," he said, trying to sound casual and proud. "That's really something impressive." "Thanks," I replied flatly. "Your mother and I would love to come to the ceremony. Support you. When is it scheduled for?" The ceremony was in 6 weeks. I hadn't planned on inviting them. Hadn't even told them I'd been nominated months earlier. It's invitation only, small venue, limited capacity. Well, surely you can get your own parents in. We'd love to be there to support you and see you get recognized for your work. That word, support, coming from him felt like an actual physical slap across the face. "Why?" I asked simply. "What do you mean, why? You're my son. I want to see you get recognized for your accomplishments." Where was that energy for the last 27 years of my life? He got immediately defensive, as I knew he would. Started listing times he'd allegedly supported me. Came to some football games when he could get away from work. Helped me move into my first apartment once. Basic bare minimum dad stuff that he somehow thought balanced out decades of systematic emotional neglect and favoritism. "You told me I was a mistake," I said quietly but firmly. Multiple times. Starting when I was 8 years old. "You said Tyler was the son you'd actually wanted and planned for. You paid for his entire life. College, cars, rent, everything, while I worked for every single thing I got. You made it very clear where I stood in this family. I was frustrated back then. I was young and didn't know how to handle it. I didn't mean those things. Yes, you absolutely did. You meant every single word. And now that I've succeeded completely despite you rather than because of you, suddenly you want to be involved in my life? That's not fair." "Fair? You want to talk to me about fair? You charged me rent at 16 years old. You refused to help with college expenses. You skipped my graduation. You've missed every important moment of my life because you were too busy worshiping Tyler and making excuses for his failures. And now you want an invitation to my award ceremony? I'm your father." No, a real father shows up for his kids. A real father supports all his children equally. A real father doesn't spend 27 years making one son feel completely worthless while handing the other son everything on a silver platter. You're just the guy whose genetics I happen to share. That's the extent of our relationship. I want to make things right between us. You can't. Some things don't get fixed with an apology. You made your choices consistently for nearly 3 decades. Now you get to live with those choices. I hung up on him. Blocked his number in my phone. Blocked his email address. Didn't invite him to the ceremony. The award ceremony itself was absolutely incredible. My entire engineering team was there celebrating with me. My girlfriend Emily flew in from her job in Boston. Some old college friends I'd stayed close with made the trip to D.C. People who actually cared about me as a person celebrated my success authentically. The people who should have been there by biology weren't, and I honestly didn't miss them at all. After the ceremony during the reception, one of my senior colleagues asked why my parents weren't there for such a major career milestone. I told him simply that we weren't close and left it at that. He looked genuinely confused and said his own father wouldn't have missed something like this for anything in the world. Must be nice to have that kind of father, I thought, but didn't say out loud. I posted exactly one photo from the event on social media. Just me holding the award plaque, smiling genuinely. Didn't mention who wasn't there or make any pointed comments. Didn't need to. Mom commented, So proud of you, sweetheart. No mention of dad whatsoever. Tyler didn't comment at all. Didn't even like the post. 2 weeks after the ceremony, Tyler called my cell phone out of nowhere. We hadn't spoken in over a year at that point. Hey man, congrats on the big award. That's really cool. Thanks, I said carefully. Look, I wanted to talk to you about something kind of serious. Dad's really struggling with what happened between you two. He feels terrible about everything. He should feel terrible. I know he wasn't perfect growing up, but he's still our dad, and he's really not doing well right now. The stress of everything, the financial problems, feeling like he's lost you, it's honestly killing him. And I think you should give him another chance. He genuinely wants to apologize, wants to try to build an actual relationship with you. He's different now. The heart attack changed him. Is he actually different? Or does he just want access to my money and my success now that I have both? Tyler got defensive immediately. Started saying I was being unfair and holding grudges and not understanding how hard things had actually been for Dad all these years. I let him talk himself completely out before responding calmly. Tyler, do you know why Dad treated us so differently our entire childhood? What do you mean? I was the unplanned pregnancy that ruined his baseball scholarship and his entire future. You were the planned son he actually wanted after he'd adjusted to his life. That's why you got absolutely everything while I got nothing. He resented me for existing and ruining his dreams. He never said anything like that to me. Of course he didn't. He said it to me. Multiple times over many years. You were the golden child who could do no wrong, so you never saw any of it. But I lived it every single day. Silence on the phone line. I honestly didn't know it was that bad for you. How could you know? You were too busy being the favorite and getting everything handed to you on a silver platter. More uncomfortable silence. What do you want me to say here? Nothing. I don't want anything from you. Just stop calling me about Dad and his feelings. His emotional state isn't my problem anymore. He made that choice a long time ago. We're still family, though. Family is supposed to be there for you when you need them. Where was family when I actually needed support? Now that I don't need anything from any of you, suddenly everyone wants a relationship? That's not how this works. So you're just going to cut us all off permanently? I didn't cut anyone off. I'm just done pretending we're something we never actually were. You all made your choices over and over for decades. Now you get to live with the natural consequences of those choices. I hung up. Haven't spoken to Tyler since that conversation. Mom and I still talk occasionally on the phone. She's caught in an impossible middle position, which I do feel somewhat bad about, but I'm absolutely not budging on Dad. She understands my position even if she wishes things could be different. She's made her choice to stay with him, and I've made my choice to maintain distance. Last I heard through Mom, Dad and Tyler are still living together in that small apartment. Dad's disability payments barely cover the basics of rent and utilities. Tyler finally got a full-time job working at a call center doing customer service, though he apparently still talks constantly about his business plans and entrepreneurial opportunities that never seem to materialize into anything real. They're struggling financially and emotionally. I'm not struggling at all. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. My dad left a voicemail. Don't bother coming. We're cutting ties. I texted back, understood. Then I quietly pulled my name from the business loan. They thought they could count on my brother. 1 week later, they were all panicking. Hey everyone. Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey Reddit. I spent 15 years building my father's company. One day he left me a voicemail. Don't bother coming. We're cutting ties. Then he handed my role to my brother. I didn't argue. I just walked away, took what's mine, and watched everything collapse. They backed the wrong horse. Here's how it happened. My 35 male dad started his equipment supply business out of a storage unit in Houston back in the 80s. 3 decades later, it was doing $4.2 million in revenue out of a 50,000 square foot facility in North Dallas. I'd put in 15 years, first learning inventory during high school summers, then operations after college, and finally modernizing the whole back-end system 4 years ago. The business was solid Texas stock, industrial equipment for oil fields, construction sites, and manufacturing plants, high-end generators, specialized hydraulic systems, custom fabrication equipment, the kind of gear that keeps the Texas economy running, but nobody outside the industry ever thinks about. Our client list included most of the major players in the state's energy sector. Dad never missed a chance to remind everyone he built it from nothing, despite the $80,000 loan from my grandfather that he never paid back. He conveniently left that part out of his bootstrapping story. In today's money, that's around $200,000 of startup capital he got for free. Not exactly the self-made narrative he pushed. My brother, 27 male, Damien, was a different story. While I was counting inventory on 102-degree warehouse days, he was at SMU, then wasting time in Europe networking. Mom and Dad paid for everything: tuition, apartment, car. The convertible BMW he wrecked sophomore year was replaced within a week. When he finally joined the business 4 years ago, Dad gave him a VP title despite having zero experience. Mom was always his biggest defender. When Damien totaled that BMW, it was her who convinced Dad to replace it immediately. She needs reliable transportation for networking events, she'd insisted, while I was driving a 10-year-old Camry with 180,000 miles that I'd paid for myself. She never pushed for me the way she did for him. Damien majored in communications, which basically meant he spent 4 years partying and making connections with other rich kids. His resume consisted of one summer internship at a marketing firm where his college roommate's dad was the CEO. Yet somehow, Dad thought he was qualified to run sales at a multi-million-dollar industrial equipment company. I still remember the day Damien first showed his true colors at work. We'd landed a major oil company contract, and I'd spent 6 months setting up the logistics and building a custom inventory system for their specific needs. We're talking 3 a.m. nights, weekends sacrificed, my girlfriend at the time breaking up with me because I was married to the job. On the day of the final presentation to their procurement team, Damien waltzed in 20 minutes late, took over my PowerPoint, and then introduced himself as the architect behind this partnership. When the client asked a technical question about implementation timelines, Damien fumbled, so I jumped in with the answer. Later that day, he cornered me in the warehouse. "Don't ever make me look bad in front of clients again," he said, jabbing his finger at my chest. "I just answered their question," I replied. "Next time, write it down and pass me a note. I'm the face of sales now. You're the back-end guy. Know your place." I should have quit that day. Instead, I swallowed my pride and kept working, telling myself I was doing it for the company my dad built, not for Damien's ego. The oil company contract ended up being worth $1.7 million in the first year alone. But guess whose name was on the commission paperwork? Not mine. Last year, I found proof Damien was inflating his commission numbers. He'd take credit for renewals that were automatic, claim deals that other sales guys had closed, and even create phantom leads that magically converted last minute to hit quarterly targets. I showed Dad the evidence, a spreadsheet comparison that took me a week to compile, and he brushed it off as how business gets done in Texas. I'd spent the last 2 quarters quietly documenting everything, building my case, keeping receipts. I wasn't planning to use any of it, but something told me to be prepared. Call it instinct from 15 years of watching my dad operate. Then one day, I noticed my dad's missed call. It was 6:42 p.m. on a Thursday, and I'd just closed our biggest deal of the quarter, without Damien's help. We weren't exactly the daily check-in type of family, so I figured it had to be something about the quarterly numbers. I hit play on the voicemail and continued packing up my stuff, half listening as I shoved my laptop into its case. "Don't bother coming to the family reunion. We're cutting ties." I froze, one hand still on my laptop zipper. 7 words, delivered in the same flat tone he'd used to cancel a lunch meeting. I stood there for a minute, his voice echoing in my head. The message was cold and efficient, like terminating a contract. After all the years I'd put into the family business, all the weekends I'd sacrificed, all the personal relationships I'd put on hold to help build his empire, this is how he ends it? A voicemail? The family reunion was our annual thing at my dad's ranch in the hill country. Been happening since I was a kid. It wasn't just a family gathering. It was also when we discussed the business direction for the coming year, hash out major decisions, and set compensation. Cutting me out of that was cutting me out of the business. Through my office window, I could see Damien in Dad's office, both of them looking at paperwork, nodding. Dad never consulted with me that way anymore. Now it all made sense. They weren't just planning next quarter, they were planning my exit. I picked up my phone, my thumbs hovering over the screen. A dozen replies ran through my mind, each one angrier than the last. But finally, I just typed a single word. Understood. If he wanted to end things, fine. I wasn't going to beg for an explanation. But if he thought he could cut me out without consequences, he had another thing coming. I reached down and pulled out the thick, leather-bound ledger from my bottom drawer. There was my name and neat signature in black ink next to my parents'. With a slow, deliberate stroke, I crossed my name off. The sound of the pen cutting through the paper felt like a physical act of separation. I took a photo of the modified document with my phone, then opened my email and wrote a message to my personal lawyer. I attached the photo and typed, "Need to talk tomorrow. Family business situation changing. Let's discuss options." I hit send, locked my office door, and walked out of the building without looking back. If my father wanted to play this game, I wasn't going to let him hold my future hostage. The next day, I acted fast, canceled my flight to the Hill Country Ranch where the reunion was happening, erased the date from my calendar, and sent an email to my parents confirming my intention to step away from the business and requesting a full financial audit. No pleasantries, no attempts to patch things up, just the cold, clear language of a businessman walking away from a bad deal. 15 years of my life in that company. 15 years of missed vacations, canceled dates, and postponed plans. For what? To be cut out with a 7-word voicemail? I'd given up a job offer at Amazon's logistics division after college to help Dad expand the business. And for what? So Damien could waltz in and take over? I quietly pulled my name from the business loan documents where I was listed as a guarantor. This wasn't an emotional decision, it was pure risk management. If they were cutting me out. Made a few calls to my lawyer to initiate the separation process. It wasn't emotional. It was strategic. My dad taught me that business is business. I was just applying his lesson. While I waited for my lawyer to call back, I backed up every relevant document I had access to. Financial reports, client lists, vendor contracts, anything that might be useful if things got ugly. Not to steal, but to protect myself. When you've spent 15 years building systems, you know exactly where the bones are buried. An hour after I sent my email, Damien texted me. "Always knew you'd bail when things got tough. Don't worry, I've got plenty of ideas to fix your outdated systems. Bet Dad wishes he'd put me in charge years ago." I didn't respond. No point adding fuel to the fire. I just took a screenshot from my records and kept working on my exit strategy. Damien had always been a talker, not a doer. His ideas typically involved spending money we didn't have on consultants we didn't need. The next morning, I got a text from Matthew, one of the warehouse managers who'd been with us for a decade. "Your dad just called an emergency meeting. Announced Damien's taking over your position effective immediately." The guy couldn't tell a circuit breaker from a fuse box if his life depended on it. Apparently, Damien had been telling Dad I was planning to start my own competing business and stealing client information for months. Complete bullshit, but Damien had always had Dad wrapped around his finger. I spent that night copying all relevant files to my personal storage, taking screenshots of admin access pages, and documenting everything I'd built or implemented. I knew exactly how this would play out. 36 hours later, my phone lit up with a tidal wave of missed calls. 78 from my mother alone, dozens more from my sister, and a handful from my father. I scrolled through the panicked texts, frantic voicemails, and increasingly desperate emails. My father's messages started with cautious, probing questions, like someone testing thin ice. But as the hours passed and my silence grew longer, they became more urgent. His words tinged with something I hadn't heard in his voice in years. Fear. "Hugo, you need to call me about the credit line paperwork. It's important. Son, we can discuss it like men. Call me back. Hugo, this isn't a game. The company's at stake here." His accountant, a humorless man from Austin I never liked, left a message that crackled with anxiety. "Hugo, we need to talk urgently. The credit line is in jeopardy without your signature." I leaned back in my chair and let a slow smile cross my face. I'd given them a head start, but now the storm had hit, and I was just getting started. See, what my dad and Damien didn't realize was that 4 years ago, when I modernized our entire business infrastructure, I'd made myself essential to the operation. Not intentionally, I'd actually documented everything meticulously, but some things you just can't transfer in a day. Things like the personal relationships I'd built with our main suppliers, the custom code that kept our inventory system running, and the specialized knowledge of our clients' needs that I'd accumulated over years. By the third day, the messages had gone from confused to desperate. My mother's voicemails were breathless pleas, her words tumbling over each other. My sister Ariel tried a softer approach. "Hey, Hugo, I don't know what's going on, but I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Let's talk." I didn't answer. Ariel meant well, but I knew my dad too well to think this was just a misunderstanding. On the 4th day, I got an email from the bank that runs our family business accounts. I opened it cautiously, bracing myself for whatever new disaster my parents had cooked up. As I scanned the document, my jaw dropped. My father and Damien had quietly tried to transfer all the remaining funds into a separate account in their names only. They'd even initiated the paperwork to dissolve the original LLC, effectively cutting me out of the picture entirely. The only reason the bank flagged it was because my name was still on some of the original documents, and my signature was required for major financial changes per our operating agreement. An agreement I'd insisted on when we restructured 4 years ago. A detail Dad had probably forgotten about in his rush to push me out. That was it. My dad wasn't just trying to break up the family. He and Damien were trying to cut me off completely, cleanly, for good. They probably thought I'd be too stunned or hurt to act. They didn't realize that by crossing that line, they'd given me the perfect excuse to hit back. I took a deep breath, then called my lawyer. We had a long, intense conversation, and by the end of it, the wheels were in motion for something much bigger than just removing my name from a business loan. They've made this easy for us, my lawyer said. Attempted financial fraud is pretty straightforward. But are you sure you want to go this route? Once you pull this trigger, there's no going back. I didn't hesitate. I'm sure. They started this war. I'm just making sure I win it. The next morning, I pulled together every scrap of paper I had on the family business. I spent hours compiling a comprehensive dossier, highlighting every shady move, every questionable expense, every suspicious transaction my father and brother had ever made. Years of bottled-up frustration fueled my focus. Dad's habit of categorizing personal expenses as business write-offs, Damien's inflated commission reports, the consulting fees paid to my cousin's web design company that never actually delivered a website, the cash deals with certain vendors that mysteriously never appeared in the official books. It was all there, meticulously documented. When I was done, I had a thick, damning stack of evidence. I filed an official complaint with the bank and froze all accounts pending a full audit. I also filed a request with the IRS to investigate possible tax fraud, attaching the most incriminating pieces from my dossier. I didn't know if it would stick, but I was willing to find out. Finally, just for good measure, I sent the whole package to my father's biggest client, a longtime family friend who I knew wouldn't like the idea of being involved in a potentially fraudulent deal. Jim had known my grandfather and had given my dad his first big contract. He was old-school Texas oil money, a man who valued loyalty and straight dealing above all else. I knew he wouldn't take kindly to learning how my father had been operating. I expected retaliation, but I was prepared. I'd already secured all my personal finances, moved my assets to new accounts, and made sure my name was off any company credit lines. Let them come at me. I was no longer exposed. That night, I sat at my apartment window overlooking downtown Dallas, watching the city lights blink on. Part of me felt a twinge of regret about how things had escalated. But another part, the part that remembered every slight, every time Damien was favored, every dismissal of my contributions, felt nothing but cold satisfaction. My phone buzzed with a text from Matthew at the warehouse. Chaos here today. Your brother tried to access the inventory system and somehow managed to crash the server. Your dad's been yelling all day. Hope whatever's going on works out, man. I smiled grimly. They were learning just how much they'd relied on me, and it had only been 4 days. That night, my phone buzzed again. Ariel. I hesitated before answering. Hugo, I know you're angry, and I don't blame you. But can we talk? Just you and me. I paused, weighing my options. Despite everything, I didn't want to drag her into the middle of this mess. She'd always been the reasonable one, trying to keep things functional when Dad's ego flared up. All right, I finally said. Let's meet tomorrow. The next day, I met Ariel at a BBQ joint in North Dallas. She was already there, waiting at a corner table, keeping an eye on the door. When she saw me, she straightened up a bit, but her expression remained serious. Ariel had always been the bridge between me and the rest of the family. 3 years younger than me, 5 years older than Damien, she'd perfected the art of neutrality in family conflicts. Hugo, what's going on? She asked, keeping her voice low. Dad's losing it. Mom's a wreck. They think you're trying to destroy the business. And Damien is just making everything worse, threatening to sue you left and right. She deserved to know the truth, but I didn't want to drag her deeper into the mess. They tried to cut me out completely, I said. Dad and Damien have been moving money into a separate account, trying to dissolve the LLC behind my back. I'm just making sure they can't burn me on the way out. Her eyes widened. That can't be right. Dad wouldn't just... No, there must be some mistake. What about Damien? Would he? I asked pointedly. She looked away, unable to deny it. Damien had always been manipulative, even with her. He'd borrowed money from her college fund once, promising to pay it back but never did. Dad covered it up, of course. I pushed a thin folder across the table. It contained carefully selected pages, just enough to make my point without overwhelming her. Bank transfer requests, questionable invoices, and emails where my father and Damien had explicitly asked their accountant to speed up the separation process. She flipped through the papers. Jesus Christ, this is a lot of money, Hugo. She paused, her fingers tapping a highlighted statement. 75,000 just gone. Yes, I said, leaning back. And that's just the beginning. They've been siphoning off funds for months, maybe years. I caught a transfer of $150,000 to a private account in their names marked business development expenses. I leaned closer. Ariel, if I hadn't reacted when I did, I'd be on the hook for all of it. My name is on those loan documents and tax forms. I could have been legally liable. She closed the folder and pressed her palm flat against it. You have to talk to them, she said firmly. There's got to be another explanation. He's not usually this stupid. And Damien? I asked. She didn't answer. I gave them a chance to explain. You know what Dad did? He left me a 7-word voicemail that broke up the family. Then he put Damien in my position the very next day. Just please don't destroy everything, she said. Mom's already talking about selling the house. If this blows up, I don't know what they'll do. I'm not the one who started this, Ariel. But I promise you, I'm going to finish it. That evening, I got a notice from the bank. The freeze on the company accounts had gone through. My lawyer had leveraged the operating agreement I'd insisted on 4 years ago, the one requiring unanimous member approval for transfers exceeding $50,000, along with evidence of unauthorized transactions. The bank had flagged over $250,000 in suspicious transactions, with several large sums still pending transfer. I pictured my father and Damien in that Austin limestone office, watching the numbers tick down, their carefully built financial empire unraveling by the hour. I wasn't just cutting myself loose. I was setting the whole ship on fire. I knew the business well enough to understand what a frozen account meant. Vendors wouldn't get paid, payroll would be delayed. The line of credit they relied on for major purchases would be jeopardized. It was the corporate equivalent of a heart attack. I woke up the next morning to my phone buzzing like crazy. My email inbox was flooded with notifications from the bank, my lawyer, and panicked messages from my father's accountant. The audit had come sooner than expected, and it was clearly making waves. I scrolled through the latest updates from the bank. They'd frozen over $400,000 in assets across several accounts and flagged another $200,000 in unexplained withdrawals going back 6 months. It was a financial stranglehold, enough to shut down the business operations completely. My father had left 3 voicemails overnight, each one more desperate than the last. Hugo, son, please. I don't know what you think you know, but you're making a terrible mistake. Call me back immediately. We can work this out. I deleted the messages without responding. An hour later, Ariel called again. Hugo, what did you do? She asked, her voice steady but strained. I did what I had to do, I replied evenly. They're freaking out, Hugo. Dad's talking about lawyers, about pressing charges for sabotage. Mom's in full panic mode, and Damien is making wild promises about fixing everything if they just give him full control. I wasn't surprised. They'd never been good at handling when their plans went sideways. I gave them a chance. Dad made his move, Damien took my position, and I made my countermove. I'm not backing down. There was a long silence on the other end. Fine. Meet with them, she said finally. One last time. For me. I hesitated. I owed Ariel at least that much. All right, I said. But this is the last time. As I hung up, my lawyer called with an update. The bank's preliminary audit had already turned up enough red flags to warrant a more thorough investigation. My father and Damien were looking at potential fraud charges if things kept going this way. You need to decide how far you want to take this, he said. Right now, you've got leverage. They're scared. This might be the time to negotiate a settlement that cuts you loose with your fair share. I considered it. A settlement would be cleaner, faster. But something in me resisted. This wasn't just about money anymore. We met at my parents' house in North Dallas that night. I'd grown up in this house, spent my teenage years in the bedroom upstairs, brought my first girlfriend to dinner at that dining table. Now it felt like enemy territory. My mother opened the door with a forced smile and quick hug. She looked tired. Inside, my father was standing in the living room, arms crossed, looking like he owned the world. Damien sat in the leather chair like it was a throne, legs spread wide, feigning confidence despite the situation. Sit down, my father demanded. I dropped into a chair, noting how every family photo featured Damien front and center, with me pushed to the side. Had it always been that way? Or was I just noticing it now? So what's this about? I asked. My father turned to me, face flushed. What the hell do you think you're doing, Hugo? Freezing the accounts, getting an audit. You're trying to destroy everything I built. I met his gaze directly. I'm destroying things? After you tried to cut me out without warning? You think I wouldn't notice $250,000 disappearing into a private account? You think I'm just going to sit back while you and Damien gut the company I helped build? Damien stood up, pointing at me. You've always been resentful of Dad's success. You've been trying to undermine me from day one. My father's face hardened. You have no idea what you've done, he said. I've got deals in the pipeline, investments in place. Damien has relationships with new clients. If you freeze these accounts, it could ruin everything. That's not my problem, I shot back. You made your decision when you tried to cut me out of the business and replace me with Damien. I'm just protecting what's mine. There was a long silence. Then Damien leaned back in his chair with a smirk. Don't worry, Dad. I'll modernize the company now that Hugo's out of the way. His systems are ancient. I've got contacts at Oracle who can set us up with real enterprise solutions. I laughed. Damien had never even logged into our inventory system, let alone understood it. Damien's right, my father said. We were planning to update the whole operation anyway. This is just accelerating the timeline. I looked at my father and saw something I'd never noticed before. He was scared. Beneath all the blustering and threats, he was terrified that his empire was slipping away. And instead of facing reality, he was doubling down on the fantasy that Damien could somehow save everything. My dad leaned in, voice low and threatening. Fine. You want to play hardball? You want to burn this family down? I'll show you what it really looks like. I held his gaze. I'd come too far to back down now. Ariel stepped between us. Stop, all of you. This isn't solving anything. I stood up and grabbed my jacket. You wanted me here, Ariel, I came. But I'm done trying to reason with them. I turned and walked out, shutting the door firmly behind me. As I got into my car, my phone buzzed with a new email, a message from my lawyer. My parents and Damien had just filed a lawsuit, claiming I had sabotaged the business and illegally taken control of their accounts. I let out a short laugh and tossed my phone on the passenger seat. So this was how they wanted to play it? Fine. I'd given them a chance to walk away. Now I'd make sure they had nothing left to fight for. The lawsuit hit me harder than expected. My father and Damien had gone nuclear, accusing me of everything from embezzlement to corporate sabotage. Their claims were outrageous, but the stakes were real. If they convinced a judge I'd illegally seized the accounts, I could be on the hook for hundreds of thousands in damages. I'd expected them to be angry, but I hadn't expected them to be this stupid. It was like they were begging to be caught. I spent the next week buried in legal documents, my lawyer working overtime to counter each new motion they filed. They had even dragged Ariel into it, calling her as a witness against me, probably hoping to break my resolve. Then, 2 days before the first court date, I received a message from my father's accountant. Hugo, we need to meet in private. There are things you need to know. I met him that night at a roadhouse off Interstate 35. He was already there when I arrived, looking nervous. He waved me over, glancing around the room. Hugo, I shouldn't be here. If they find out, he nervously adjusted his glasses. The IRS has been sniffing around some of our filings. With the lawsuit and court-ordered audit, I could be looking at criminal charges for my part in this. I need to get ahead of this. Just tell me what this is about, I said, sitting across from him. He leaned forward, voice dropping. Your brother. He's been hiding money for years. Offshore accounts, shell companies, under-the-table cash deals. Your father only found out recently, but he's been covering for him. It's bad. I'd expected some financial misconduct, but this sounded much worse. How bad? Tax evasion, wire fraud, maybe money laundering. I've been cooking the books at their instruction for years, but this lawsuit, if it goes to discovery, we're all exposed. I can't risk my license, my freedom. He slid a flash drive across the table. Everything you need is on here. Bank statements, wire transfers, contracts. Your brother has been systematically bleeding the company dry for years, and your father has been helping cover it up. It's enough to sink them both. That night, I reviewed the files. It was all there. Over $750,000 had been quietly siphoned out of the company, with Damien's fingerprints all over it and my father's signature approving most of it. There were equipment purchases that never happened, consulting fees paid to shell companies Damien controlled, and even a fake warehouse lease that was actually funding his condo in South Padre Island. My father had signed off on all of it, either knowingly or in willful ignorance. The next morning, I sent everything to my lawyer with a note. Let's get this over with. By the time the court date arrived, my parents and Damien were backed into a corner. Their accounts were frozen, their business reputation in tatters, and now, with this new evidence, they were staring down potential criminal charges. My father looked older as he entered the courtroom, his usual swagger gone. Damien wasn't even there. He'd apparently gone out of town on business the night before. The judge took less than an hour to rule. The evidence was overwhelming. The case was dismissed, and the court ordered a full forensic audit of my parents' finances and the business. I watched my father's face as reality set in. He hadn't just lost the business, he'd lost everything. Outside the courtroom, he approached me, shoulders slumped. Hugo, you have to believe me. I didn't know how bad it was with Damien. I was just trying to protect him. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. You chose him over me, I said quietly. Every time. And now you're paying for it. I walked away, leaving him standing there, suddenly looking every one of his 68 years. A week later, Ariel called. She'd found our parents a small apartment in Arlington. She didn't ask for my help and I didn't offer it. But I sent them enough for 3 months' rent, more for her sake than theirs. Did you know about Damien? He's ruined them, Hugo. And they let him do it. They chose him over you, over me, over everything Dad spent his life building. I could hear the hurt in her voice. It wasn't just me who'd been betrayed. As for the business, it had imploded completely. The audit revealed that Damien had been siphoning money for years. The company was deeply in debt, and most of their major clients had jumped ship when the scandal hit the Dallas business press. The warehouse was shuttered, the equipment sold at auction. Damien had disappeared. Last Ariel heard, he was in Mexico, ignoring their calls, with about $300,000 of the company's money. I signed the final papers dissolving my connection to the business, severing the last financial ties between us. With my settlement money and industry connections, I was already 6 weeks into establishing my own operation in Oklahoma City. Different state, different market, similar industry. I'd secured a modest warehouse space, brought over 2 trusted employees from the Dallas operation, and started building something that was entirely mine. No family drama, no nepotism, just sound business practices. 3 months later, my father called directly. His voice was different, subdued, but still with that undertone of entitlement. Hugo, we need to talk. Your mother and I, we've hit a rough patch. Damien has cleaned us out and disappeared. We were wrong. We need your help to rebuild the business. I let his words hang in the air. Part of me felt vindicated. The other part was just tired of the whole thing. I'm sorry, Dad. That chapter of my life is closed. Come on, son. We have nothing left. We were wrong about you. Wrong about Damien. We can start over, rebuild the business together, the right way this time. I still have connections across Texas. I took a deep breath. Number, you made your choice. Now you have to live with it. I've moved on. Your mother needs her medication. The insurance ... His voice broke for a moment. I felt a twinge in my chest, but quickly suppressed it. He'd been manipulating me for years with guilt. Not this time. I already talked to Ariel about that. She's handling Mom's prescriptions through her clinic. You'll be fine. You can't just abandon your family, Hugo. After all I've done for you. I almost laughed at that. All you've done for me? Dad, I worked 15 years building your company while you handed everything to Damien on a silver platter. I'm done. I hung up and blocked his number. Maybe someday I'd be ready to have them in my life again in some small way. But I would never again tie my future to their judgment or put my financial security in their hands. My father taught me one valuable lesson after all. Business is business. Family is something else entirely. What do you guys think? Did I do the right thing by refusing to help them start over? Edit. Sup guys, it's been a while. Just wanted to let you know an update is coming soon. A lot went down. Stay tuned. Update. Hey again, Reddit. It's been 6 months since my main post, and let me tell you, shit went insane. Yesterday, the Dallas Morning News ran a story about a prominent local businessman's son being arrested in Puerto Vallarta. Yes, that was Damien. Local authorities picked him up at a beachfront condo where he'd been living under a fake name for the past 6 months. He's been extradited back to Texas and charged with wire fraud, tax evasion, and money laundering. The DA is talking 15 to 20 years if convicted on all counts. The paper made it sound like he'd been caught during a routine investigation. Like maybe he got sloppy, or someone recognized him, or he pissed off the wrong person down there. He didn't. What the article didn't mention was that his location, evidence of his financial crimes, and a comprehensive paper trail documenting every illegal transaction had been delivered to the FBI, IRS Criminal Investigation Division, and Texas Department of Banking exactly 30 days before his arrest. By me. When Damien disappeared to Mexico, I knew the game wasn't over. Half-finished jobs irritate me. Always have. So while my parents were crying to Ariel about their lost fortune, I quietly hired a private investigator in Mexico City who specializes in finding people who don't want to be found. Took 2 months and cost me $45,000, but he located Damien living in a $7,000 per month oceanfront condo, driving a new Porsche Taycan, and dating a local restaurant owner. The PI sent me photos of Damien lounging by the pool and laughing like he didn't have a care in the world, like he hadn't destroyed our family business and left our parents destitute. Basic lifestyle surveillance confirmed it was him. The PI got me his alias. He was going by Jack Stevens, his new phone number, and his banking information. From there, I built a comprehensive case. Turned out those offshore accounts the accountant had flagged were just the tip of the iceberg. Damien had been siphoning company funds since day one and had set up an elaborate network of shell companies to hide the money. He'd created fake vendor accounts that charged our company for non-existent services, set up dummy corporations in Nevada and Wyoming to receive consulting fees, even had a fake property management company that supposedly leased equipment to us, equipment we already owned. The full amount was close to $1.2 million, significantly more than the $300,000 my parents initially thought. I didn't do this for justice. I didn't do it to help my parents recover their money. I did it because I finished what I start. When I had everything in place, bank records, transfer confirmations, IP logs from his account logins, even photos of him accessing the accounts from his Mexico hideout, I put together 3 identical packages. One for the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, one for IRS criminal investigations, and one for the State Banking Commission. Added a detailed timeline, contact information for all relevant witnesses, including our family accountant, who was more than willing to cooperate to save his own skin, and a roadmap for prosecution. Then I sent them certified mail, no return address, and waited. I didn't expect them to move so quickly. Federal agencies typically take their time with white-collar cases, but apparently the evidence was too solid to ignore. Maybe they had him on their radar already for other scams. Either way, they moved. The FBI agent leading the case called me yesterday. Apparently, my name was all over the financial documents as the former operations director, so they wanted a statement. I gave them what they needed. They don't know I was the one who delivered the evidence, and they don't need to. Damien's facing federal charges now. According to his court-appointed attorney, seems like his Mexico money didn't last long enough to hire a decent lawyer, he's trying to make a deal, offering to testify against our father for a reduced sentence. Classic Damien, always looking for the easy way out. Dad will likely face charges too. While he might get a slightly lighter sentence since Damien was the primary architect, at his age, even a 5-year sentence could mean spending his remaining good years behind bars. My parents' remaining assets have been frozen pending the outcome of the case. Ariel says they might lose the apartment I paid for. She asked if I'd help them again. I didn't. The old company is officially dead. Its assets were liquidated months ago. Its reputation buried. My new operation in Oklahoma crossed the $1 million revenue mark last quarter. I've hired good people, implemented solid systems, and built something clean and functional from the ground up. No family drama, no hidden agendas, no Damien. He'll spend years in federal prison wondering who built the case against him. Was it the accountant? A vengeful client? Some random banker who spotted irregularities? It'll eat at him daily, but he'll never know it was me. He'll never know I tracked his every move, documented his crimes methodically, and handed him to the feds on a silver platter. He'll never understand the level of detail and planning that went into his downfall. Some might call it revenge. I just call it closing the loop. As for my parents, they made their choice when they cut me out with that 7-word voicemail. They'll have to live with the consequences. Ariel's still caught in the middle, and I help her when I can. But that chapter with my parents is closed for good. In the end, Damien taught me something too. Always check who's moving pieces behind the scenes. Business is business. At 13, my abusive dad kicked me out into the January cold half-naked saying, "You don't deserve to live," after believing my golden brother lies about me. Years later, karma hit them hard. Sup Reddit. My golden brother framed me at 13, watched me get beaten and kicked out into the snow, then went on with his perfect life. 13 years later, one desperate text from him was all I needed to burn it all down. I, 26 male. And although everything went down in my life at the age of 13, this had been my life since I could remember. My parents had me when they were 36. The accident doesn't even cover it. More like a biological middle finger from the universe. They already had 2 kids when I showed up, and neither of them wanted to start over with diapers and daycare. My brother Garrett was 4 years older than me. Golden child. Could do no wrong in Dad's eyes. Played varsity baseball, got decent grades, had the right friends. Dad went to every single one of his games, bought him whatever gear he wanted, talked about him like he was destined for greatness. My sister Kendra was 2 years older than me. She took after Mom, always playing victim when it suited her. She'd break something and blame me, steal money from mom's purse and say I did it, start fights and cry when dad came home so I'd get hit instead of her. Mom never stopped any of it. She was too busy making everything about her. If dad hit me, she'd cry about how stressful the house was and how nobody appreciated how hard she worked. If I complained about Kendra, she'd sigh and ask why I always caused problems. She had this way of turning herself into the victim of every situation, even ones that had nothing to do with her. The worst part? I never knew what would set dad off. Could be anything. One time I got a B on a math test, and he threw the paper at me, told me I was stupid. Another time I accidentally broke a glass washing dishes, and he made me stand outside in the cold for an hour. No coat, no shoes, just standing on the back porch while he watched TV like nothing was happening. My siblings just ignored it. I was just background noise in their perfect little lives. I had one person who gave a damn. Dad's father. My grandpa. Pop, I called him. He lived about 30 minutes away and came around maybe once a month. He'd see the marks on my arms, the way I flinched when someone moved too fast, how quiet I was compared to Garrett and Kendra. He never said anything directly, but I could tell he knew. He'd always make a point of talking to me, asking about school, bringing me books or little things he picked up. He was the only decent one in the family. Mom hated when he visited. She'd get tense, put on this fake smile, act like everything was perfect. Dad would be on better behavior too, like they were both afraid Pop would call them out. They never did anything obvious when he was there. Then Garrett messed up, and instead of owning it, he threw me under the bus so hard I ended up in the snow with nowhere to go. Dad collected vintage baseball cards. Not just any cards, the expensive ones. He had this binder full of cards from the 60s and 70s, some worth hundreds of dollars each. His pride and joy. He kept them in a locked cabinet in his office and only took them out to look at them or show off to his buddies. Garrett knew the combination. Dad had given it to him a few months back. Some bonding thing about trust and responsibility. Garrett was the golden child, so obviously he could be trusted with Dad's most prized possession. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I got home from school and the house was quiet. Mom was at work. Kendra was at a friend's place. Dad wouldn't be back for another 2 hours. Garrett was supposed to be at baseball practice. I went to my room and started on homework. About an hour later, I heard Garrett's door open, heard him moving around, then heard the front door slam. Looked out my window and saw him driving off fast. Dad got home around 6. I heard him go straight to his office like he always did after work. Then I heard the cabinet open. Then silence. Then the worst sound in the world. "Where are my cards?" His voice wasn't loud. It was quiet. That cold, dangerous quiet that meant someone was about to get destroyed. I stayed in my room, door closed, pretending I didn't exist. "Garrett!" Dad's voice boomed through the house. Then louder. "Garrett! Get down here right now!" Garrett must have gotten back while I wasn't paying attention, because I heard his door open and his footsteps on the stairs. I pressed my ear against my door to hear. "Yeah, Dad? Where are my cards?" "What cards?" "Don't play stupid with me. My 1967 set. 3 of them are missing from the binder." Silence. I could picture Garrett's face. That moment where he realized he was caught. Then I heard the words that changed everything. "I didn't touch them. Must have been him." My stomach dropped. "What?" Dad's voice. "Your youngest. He's always in your office snooping around. I saw him in there last week." I opened my door and came out. "I didn't touch anything." Dad turned to look at me. His face was red, jaw clenched. "You calling your brother a liar?" "I'm saying I didn't take anything. I don't even know the combination." Garrett jumped in real quick. "Yeah, because you couldn't figure it out. You probably watched Dad open it." "I didn't." Dad stepped toward me. "Don't lie to me." "I'm not lying." "So you're saying Garrett is?" I looked at Garrett. He stared back at me with this blank expression, not even pretending to care that he was framing me. "Yeah," I said. "He's lying." Garrett's expression changed. He stepped forward. "Say that again. You're lying. You took the cards and now you're blaming me." Garrett shoved me. Hard. I stumbled back into the wall. "Stop," Dad said, but not to Garrett. To me. "Stop making this worse." Garrett shoved me again. I shoved him back. We went at it right there in the hallway, fists swinging, both of us crashing into walls. Dad pulled us apart after maybe 10 seconds, threw me down on the floor. "Where are they?" Dad's voice was ice. "I don't know. I didn't take them." He grabbed me by my shirt and dragged me to my room. Started tearing through my stuff. Threw books off my shelf, dumped out my drawers, checked under the mattress. Found nothing because there was nothing to find. But that didn't matter. Garrett said I did it, and Dad believed Garrett over me every single time. Mom came home in the middle of the search. Saw the chaos. Saw me on the floor with Dad looming over me. What's happening? Your son stole my cards, Dad said. Mom looked at me, then at Dad, then sighed this big dramatic sigh like I just ruined her day. Why do you always do this to us? Not, are you okay, or let's figure this out? Just making herself the victim of me getting accused of something I didn't do. I didn't take anything. Then who did? Mom's voice was sharp. Garrett. Stop lying, Garrett said from the doorway. Kendra got home around that time. Dad called her into the room. Did you see your brother in my office? Kendra looked at Garrett, then at me, then back at Dad. You could see her doing the calculation. Side with the golden child or the family punching bag. Yeah, she said. Last week, I saw him coming out of there. She'd been staying at a friend's house that entire week. But that didn't matter. She was backing Garrett's story, probably hoping to stay in Dad's good graces. 2 against 1. Both of them lying. Both of them throwing me to the wolves. Dad grabbed me by the arm and pulled me up. His grip was tight enough to bruise. You're going to tell me where those cards are. I don't know because I didn't take them. He backhanded me across the face. Hard. My head snapped to the side, and I tasted blood. Mom made a little gasp, but didn't say anything. Garrett and Kendra just watched. Tell me. I didn't do it. He hit me again. Then again. I stopped trying to defend myself, just took it. What was the point? When he finally stopped, I was on the floor with my face throbbing and my ears ringing. Dad stood over me, breathing hard. You cost me thousands of dollars, he said. Those cards were worth more than you'll ever be. Then he said the thing that made me snap. I wish we'd never had you. Something broke inside me. I looked up at him. You shouldn't have had me if you hate me this much. The room went dead silent. Even Garrett and Kendra looked shocked. Dad's face went from red to purple. What did you say? I said you shouldn't have had me. You've made it pretty clear I'm a mistake you've been trying to ignore for 13 years. So yeah, you shouldn't have had me. He grabbed me, dragged me to the front door, opened it. It was January. Snow on the ground, temperature in the 20s. I was in a t-shirt and shorts, no coat, no shoes. Might as well have been half naked in that weather. Get out. You, what? You don't even deserve to live. You are not my son. Dad! He shoved me outside and slammed the door. I heard the lock click. I stood there on the front porch for maybe 30 seconds, too stunned to move. Then I heard Dad's voice through the door, yelling at Mom about something. Nobody was coming to let me back in. The cold hit fast. Within a minute, I was shivering. I banged on the door. Dad! Dad! Come on! It's freezing. Nothing. I kept banging, kept yelling. The neighbors had their lights on, but nobody came outside. They'd heard Dad yelling before. This was just another Tuesday night at our house. I gave up after 10 minutes. My fingers were going numb. I walked down the driveway in my socks, snow soaking through immediately. Made it to the gas station about half a mile away. This was back when gas stations still had payphones. The clerk gave me a weird look but didn't say anything when I used it. I called Pop. Hello? Pop, it's me. Hey kiddo. What's wrong? He could hear it in my voice. Dad kicked me out. I'm at the Shell station on Maple. Can you come get me? I'll be there in 25 minutes. Stay inside where it's warm. Pop showed up in 20 minutes. Took one look at me and his face went hard. What happened? I told him everything in the car. The cards, Garrett's lie, Kendra backing him up, Dad kicking me out. Pop didn't say much, just listened with his hands tight on the steering wheel. When we got to his house, he made me take a hot shower and gave me warm clothes. Then he called Dad. I couldn't hear Dad's side, but I heard Pop's. You kicked a 13-year-old out in the snow. I don't care what he supposedly did. He's staying with me. If you show up here, I'm calling the police and telling them everything. The hitting, the neglect, all of it. Try me. He hung up, looked at me. You're staying here. Permanently. What about? I'll handle it. Your mom will sign whatever I need her to sign. She won't want cops asking questions about how her son ended up sick from exposure. Plus, I know a family lawyer who owes me a favor. We'll file for emergency custody first, then permanent guardianship. With the documented abuse and what just happened, they won't fight it. Trust me. I didn't understand what he meant until the next day when I woke up with a fever. Turned out standing in the snow for 10 minutes, then walking half a mile in wet socks, does bad things to your body. Pop took me to the doctor. I had a nasty cold and some mild exposure symptoms, but the doctor said it could have been way worse. Pop was pissed when he heard that. I spent 2 weeks in bed feeling like death. Pop took care of me the whole time. Brought me soup, made sure I took medicine, sat with me when the fever made me delirious. Mom came by once. Stood in the doorway looking uncomfortable while Pop glared at her. She signed some papers, asked if I was okay in this flat voice like she was reading from a script, then left. I never went back to that house. Living with Pop was different. Quiet. Nobody hit me. Nobody made me feel like I was a mistake. He didn't have much money, lived in a small 2-bedroom house on the edge of town, but it was stable. The first few months were weird. I kept expecting something bad to happen. Kept waiting for Pop to get tired of me and send me back. It took a while to understand he actually wanted me there. School was easier without the constant stress of home. My grades went from decent to good to excellent. Turns out when you're not living in survival mode, learning comes pretty easy. By freshman year of high school, I was pulling straight A's without even trying that hard. I worked too. Started washing dishes at a diner when I was 14. Lied about my age. Told them I was 16. They didn't ask questions. The manager liked me. Said I was reliable. Showed up on time. Didn't complain. Within 2 years, I was working the line during busy shifts. The money wasn't great, but it added up. Dad never reached out. No one did. Sophomore year, I joined the robotics club. Wasn't planning to, but my physics teacher kept bugging me about it. Said I had the right kind of brain for it. Figured why not? Turned out I loved it. Loved building things, solving problems, working with my hands. Our team made it to state championships that year. We didn't win, but we placed top 10, which was huge for our school. Junior year, I went all in on scholarship applications. Every single one I could find. Spent hours writing essays, filling out applications, getting recommendations. The responses started coming in spring. I got a few small ones. Then in April, I got the big one. Full ride to State University for engineering. Tuition, room, board, everything covered. I showed Pop the letter. He read it twice, then pulled me into a hug. Proud of you, kiddo. I graduated third in my class. Pop came to the ceremony. Sat in the front row, clapped louder than anyone when they called my name. My family didn't show. Didn't expect them to. College was a different world. Suddenly, I was surrounded by people who actually wanted to be there, who cared about learning, who had goals. I threw myself into mechanical engineering. The coursework was brutal, but I'd been preparing for brutal my whole life. I also kept working. Got a job in the university machine shop, spent summer breaks doing 12-hour shifts at a manufacturing plant. Miserable work, but the money was good. I was obsessed with building a financial cushion. Never wanted to be dependent on anyone again. Never wanted to be one bad break away from ending up back at that house. Graduated at 22 with a degree, 0 debt, and a solid chunk of savings. Got hired immediately by an aerospace company. Starting salary was $65,000. To a kid who grew up getting beat and sleeping in a closet-sized room, that was life-changing money. I moved to a different city for the job. Rented a decent apartment. Bought a used car with cash. Kept living like I was broke even though I wasn't anymore. For 3 years, I lived on maybe 40% of my income. Saved and invested the rest aggressively. At 25, I had enough for a down payment on a house. Found one in a quiet neighborhood. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, decent yard. Needed some work, but nothing major. I put down a huge chunk, kept the mortgage payment lower than my old rent. The house was mine. Spent the first month fixing it up. Painted walls, updated fixtures, fixed the fence in the backyard. Made it look like an actual home instead of a rundown investment property. Then I called Pop. Hey kiddo, how's the new place? Good. Listen, I've got 3 bedrooms here and I'm only using 1. You should move in. Silence on the other end. Then, you sure? Yeah. You took me in when I had nothing. This is me paying that forward. Plus, your house is falling apart and you're too stubborn to admit it. He laughed. Fair enough. Pop moved in 2 weeks later. We converted one of the bedrooms into his space, set him up with everything he needed. He tried to pay rent. I refused. Tried to cover utilities. I refused that too. You already paid, I told him. When you picked me up from that gas station and gave me a chance. We're even. We fell into an easy routine. I'd work during the day. He'd do light maintenance on the house and run errands. We'd have dinner together most nights. Nothing fancy, just normal meals and conversation. First time in my life I actually felt like I had a family. This went on for about a year. Best year of my life. Stable job, solid income, my own house, and the one person who'd ever given a damn living comfortably under my roof. Then Dad showed up. I got home from work on a Thursday and saw a car I didn't recognize in my driveway. Older sedan, kind of beat up. Had that feeling in my gut immediately, like trouble was coming. Pop was standing on the front porch looking tense. When I got closer, I saw why. Dad was there. He looked older. More gray hair, deeper lines on his face. Still had that same hard expression, though. That look that used to make me flinch when I was 13. Later, I'd find out he'd been sniffing around town asking questions. Got my address from public records. Property ownership's not hard to find if you know someone's name. Not anymore. Can I help you? I kept my voice flat. He looked me up and down like he was sizing up livestock. So you did all right for yourself. Nice house. What do you want? I came to check out my new place. I almost laughed. Your what? This house. I'm moving in. Lost my apartment last month and I need somewhere to stay. You've got the space and I'm your father. It's your responsibility to take care of me. You're not moving in. Don't be difficult. This house is too nice for just you anyway. You probably can't even afford it on your own. I'll help with expenses once I find work. I own this house and you're not stepping foot inside it. He waved that off like I was being dramatic. You wouldn't even know how to be successful if I hadn't raised you right. Everything you have is because I taught you discipline. The least you can do is give me a room. Pop made a noise that might have been a laugh or a cough. I just stared. Don't be selfish. I'm your father. You owe me that much. I don't owe you anything. His face hardened. Watch your tone. I don't care how old you are. You don't talk to me like that. Then leave my property before I make you leave. He stepped closer. Old habit, trying to intimidate me with his size. You think you're tough now? You're still that scared little kid who couldn't even look me in the eye. No. I'm the adult you made when you beat me for 13 years and threw me out in the snow. And I'm telling you to get off my porch, or I'll handle it the way you understand it. You wouldn't have anything if it wasn't for me raising you. He raised his voice. That actually made me laugh. Raising me? You beat me and threw me out when I was 13. Because you destroyed my baseball cards. $6,000 worth of collectibles. You cost me everything and now you owe me. You're living in this nice house because of the discipline I taught you. Time to pay back what you took from me. I didn't touch your cards. Garrett stole them. That's what you said then, and it was garbage then too. Always lying to get out of trouble. Well, now you're going to make it right. I'm moving in, and you're going to cover my expenses until I'm back on my feet. It's the least you can do after what you put me through. And I'm not offering. This conversation is over. Leave. You don't get to tell me what to do. Actually, I do. It's called property rights. This is my house. You're trespassing. Leave now, or I'm calling the police. He laughed. Mean and sharp. The police? For what? Trespassing. Harassment. I can file assault charges from when I was a kid if you want to make this interesting. Pop kept records. Didn't you, Pop? Pop nodded. Hospital visits. Photos of bruises. Dates and times. All of it. Dad's expression shifted. Not scared, but calculating. He was realizing this wasn't the helpless 13-year-old he remembered. You're making a mistake, he said. Family is supposed to help each other. You stopped being family when you kicked me out for something I didn't do. Now you're a stranger on my porch who won't leave. I'm going inside to get my phone. If you're still here when I come back, I'm dialing 911. Your choice. I turned and walked to the door. Heard him start to say something, but Pop cut him off. You heard him. Go. I went inside, grabbed my phone, came back out. He was still there, but he'd backed up a few steps. His car door was open. You're going to regret this, he said. No, I really won't. Here's how this goes. You leave now. You don't come back. You don't call. You don't show up at my work. If I see you anywhere near my property again, I'm filing a restraining order and pressing every charge I can think of. Pop's got enough documentation to make your life very difficult. Am I clear? His jaw was tight, hands in fists. For a second, I thought he might actually try something. Then he got in his car. This isn't over. Yeah, it is. If I see you again, you're going to jail. That's a promise. He drove off. Tires squealed a little. Real mature. Pop and I stood there for a minute watching the street. You think he'll come back? Pop asked. Maybe. Doesn't matter. If he does, I'll follow through. I'm done with him. He wasn't getting this house. He wasn't getting anything from me ever again. I didn't hear from him for 2 weeks. Then Garrett texted me. First message in 13 years. Hey, can we talk? About what? About everything. I messed up back then. I want to apologize for real. You already tried that once. I didn't care then either. I know, but things are different now. Dad's been on my case constantly. I'm trying to fix things with the family. Not my problem. Come on, man, we're brothers. That almost made me laugh. We've never been brothers. You threw me under the bus to save yourself and watched me get beat for it. Then you went on with your life while I got kicked out in the snow. Whatever you need, figure it out yourself. I put my phone down. Figured that was the end of it. But Garrett kept texting. Over the next few days, he sent a dozen messages. Some apologetic, some trying to guilt trip me, some just rambling about how hard things were for him. I ignored all of them. Then he sent one that caught my attention. Dad's losing it. I think he's going to do something crazy. I stared at that message for a minute. Part of me didn't care, but another part saw an opportunity. I thought about it for a bit. Garrett was scared. Dad was unstable. And somewhere in all that chaos, Garrett was probably worried the truth might come out. Time to push that button. Yeah, Pop mentioned something about that, I texted back. Said Dad's been telling people he thinks he was lied to back then. About the cards. I hit send and waited. The 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Disappeared. Appeared again. Garrett was typing and deleting. Finally, what do you mean? Pop ran into one of Dad's old friends at the hardware store. Guy said Dad's been going on and on about how his kids screwed him over. How someone lied to him about something important and he's been thinking about it for years. More typing. More deleting. That's just Dad being Dad. Maybe. Pop seemed to think it was serious, though. Said Dad kept mentioning the cards, kept saying he needed to figure out what really happened. I could picture Garrett's face right now. That panicked calculation he always did when things weren't going his way. Look, he texted, I need to tell you something. Go ahead. The dots appeared and disappeared for a solid 2 minutes. When the message finally came through, it was long. Okay, look, I need to be straight with you because Dad's spiraling and I need backup here. Remember those cards? Yeah, that was me. I took them to sell because I needed cash for something. Sold 2 of them, but the 67 mantle got damaged in my car before I could move it. I panicked and blamed you because Dad was already on the warpath, and you know how he gets. I read it once, then again, screenshot it immediately, sent it to my email, backed it up to cloud storage. Garrett was still typing. But here's the thing. Dad's been a psycho about this for years. Like legitimately obsessed. He brings it up whenever he's mad about anything. My son destroyed my cards. My life went downhill after that. Like, dude, they were just baseball cards. He's used that story as the reason for why everything in his life sucked. He acts like you burned down his house. And now he's apparently telling people he was lied to? The man's unhinged. Another message came through. I'm not saying what I did was right, but we both know Dad made everything worse than it needed to be. He's the one who beat you over some cardboard. He's the one who kicked a kid out in the snow. I made a mistake, but he's the problem here. And if he's really digging into this now, I need you to have my back. We can tell him together. Make him understand it was just a dumb kid mistake, and he needs to let it go. You know how he gets when it's just one person. But if we both talk to him, maybe he'll actually listen for once. One more message. Can you help me out here? I'm serious about making this right, but I can't deal with Dad alone. You've always been smarter about handling him anyway. I sat there looking at my phone. After all these years, he just handed it to me. Confessed in writing because he thought I'd help him manage Dad. Thought he could trash Dad, rewrite what happened, and get me to be his shield. Even better, he'd admitted to stealing the cards to sell them. Not an accident. Theft. And he still somehow made himself the victim in the story. This was almost too easy. Yeah, I texted back. I'll help. Garrett sent back a relieved message. Thank you, man. Seriously. I knew you'd understand. Dad's always been the real problem and we both know it. When do you want to talk to him? I didn't respond. Just opened a new text to Dad. Then I put my phone away and went to work. 2 hours later, Garrett sent another message. You still there? Then, so when do you want to meet up to talk to Dad? I'm thinking we should do it somewhere public so he can't blow up. Then, hey, seriously, I need to know the plan here. He sent 6 more messages over the next hour, getting more agitated each time, asking why I wasn't responding, saying he thought we were going to handle this together, saying he'd trusted me with the truth. You sent it to him, didn't you? You piece of garbage, I asked you for help. I trusted you, and you just sold me out. Do you have any idea what you just did to me? I almost laughed at that last one. He trusted me the same way I trusted him when I was 13, and he threw me under the bus. Funny how that works. I didn't check my phone until lunch. When I did, I had 23 missed calls. 12 from Garrett, 8 from Kendra, 3 from Mom. I listened to one voicemail from Garrett. He was yelling, panicking, begging me to tell Dad I was lying, or that I'd faked the screenshot somehow. Said Dad had beaten him so bad he could barely stand. Said Dad kicked him out and told him to never come back. 2 days later, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Family meeting, tonight, 7 p.m. Your mother's house. Be there. It was Dad. 10 minutes later, another text. This is not optional. I pulled up to Mom's house. Dad's truck was in the driveway. Garrett's car. Kendra's. I walked in without knocking. The whole family was in the living room. Mom on the couch looking nervous. Kendra next to her. Garrett in the armchair trying to look casual, and Dad, standing in the middle of the room with his laptop open on the coffee table. Everyone turned when I walked in. Garrett's face went white. What's he doing here? Dad looked at me. Something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Sit down. I stayed standing near the door, arms crossed. Mom started to say something, but Dad cut her off. Everyone shut up and listen. The room went silent. Dad showed Garrett's confession text on the screen. Garrett, Dad said, voice calm. Too calm. Want to explain this? Garrett shifted in his seat. Dad, I already told you he's lying. He faked that somehow. Stop. Garrett stopped. I made you show me the thread on your phone. Same number, same timestamps. No way out. Dad's jaw tightened. You sent this. You confessed. You lied to me for 13 years. The room was dead quiet. Kendra was staring at the floor. Mom had her hand over her mouth. Garrett tried again. I was scared, okay? I was a kid and I panicked and you were 17. Old enough to know better. Old enough to let your brother get beaten and thrown out for something you did. It was a mistake. You made a choice. Dad's voice was getting louder now. Every single day for 13 years, you made the choice to stay quiet. You went to college on my dime, got your car, got your apartment, all while Dad pointed at me, was working doubles at a diner and sleeping in his grandpa's spare room. Garrett looked at me, then back at Dad. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. I was wrong. I should have. The slap was so fast I almost missed it. Dad's hand across Garrett's face. The sound of it echoed in the room like a gunshot. Garrett's head snapped to the side. He grabbed his face, stared at Dad in shock. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Dad stood over him. You watched me throw out the wrong kid and let it happen. Garrett's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Dad turned to Kendra. And you knew. The whole time. Kendra's eyes went wide. Dad! Don't you dare! His hand was shaking. Not from fear. From rage barely held back. You backed his story. And then you sat at my table for 13 years pretending you didn't. Kendra started crying. I was scared. Of what? Telling the truth? Mom tried to stand up. Please, let's just sit down. Mom sat. Dad looked around the room. At Garrett holding his face, at Kendra crying, at Mom frozen on the couch. Then he looked at me. I'm sorry, he said. I'm sorry for not believing you. I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry for 13 years of thinking you were the problem when it was me. His voice cracked. I threw out the wrong kid. I didn't say anything. Just stood there. Dad turned back to Garrett and Kendra. You're both out. I'm rewriting my will first thing tomorrow. Out of my house, out of my life. You want to rebuild from nothing like he did? Go ahead. See how it feels. Garrett stood up. Dad, please. Get out. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. Garrett looked at me. Like I was supposed to save him. Like I owed him something. I stared back. Said nothing. He grabbed his jacket and walked out. Slammed the door behind him. Kendra was still crying on the couch. Daddy, please. You too. Out. She looked at Mom. Mom wouldn't look at her. Kendra got up and left. Door closed quieter this time. The room was silent except for Mom's quiet sobbing. Dad looked at me again. Can we talk? No. I know I don't deserve. You don't. You're right about that. I'm trying to make this right. You can't. What's done is done. You made your choice 13 years ago. This? I gestured around the room. This is just you dealing with the consequences. What can I do? Nothing. There's nothing you can do. I don't need your apology. I don't need your money. I don't need anything from you. I headed for the door. Enjoy your clean house. I walked out, got in my car, drove home. Pop was waiting up. How'd it go? Dad slapped Garrett in front of everyone. Cut them both out of his will. Kicked them out. Pop nodded slowly. Good. He stood up, stretched. Want some tea? Yeah, sure. Garrett showed up 2 days after that. I saw him from the window. He looked rough. Unshaven, wrinkled clothes, like he'd been sleeping in his car. He had a duffel bag with him. He knocked on the door. I didn't answer. He knocked again. I know you're in there. Just let me in. We need to talk. Pop came out from the kitchen. Saw Garrett through the window. Want me to handle it? No. I got this. I opened the door but left the security chain on. What? I need a place to stay. No. Come on, man. I'm your brother. You're the guy who ruined my childhood to save himself. That's it. I apologized. You confessed. That's not the same thing. I have nowhere else to go. That's your situation. I shut the door in his face, locked it, walked away. He pounded on the door for maybe 5 minutes, yelling about family and second chances and how I was heartless. Then his voice faded and I heard his car start up. Pop was watching from the kitchen doorway. Feel bad? No. He went back to the kitchen. Conversation over. The next week was a spam flood from all three of them. Same guilt, different fonts. Kendra tried one more time about a month later. Showed up at my work somehow. Waited in the parking lot until my shift ended. I saw her leaning against her car. She'd lost weight, looked stressed, probably struggling now that Dad had cut her off, and she actually had to support herself. I have a deal for you, she said, when I walked past her. I kept walking. Just hear me out. Dad wants to talk. He'll help with, I don't know, whatever you need. Down payment on a bigger place, new truck, whatever. Just sit down with him once. I stopped, turned around. You're trying to broker a reconciliation so you can get back in the will. Her face went red. That's not... Yeah, it is. You think if I forgive him, he'll soften up and let you back in. That's the play. We're family. No. You were insurance. You watched what happened to me and stayed quiet because it was safer. Now you're scrambling because the safety's gone. I got in my car. Good luck with that. She was still standing there when I drove off. Blocked her number that night. 2 weeks later, an envelope showed up at my house. No return address. Mom's handwriting. Inside was a Thanksgiving photo. Mom at one end, Garrett and Kendra on either side. Dad wasn't in it. Guess he'd already bailed on their pity holiday. And an empty chair. My old spot. Dead center in the frame like a prop. On the back, we miss you. There's always a place for you here. I stared at it for 10 seconds. Then trashed it and went back to the garage. Pop looked up when I came in. What was that? Mom trying again? Work? No. Good. Haven't heard a word since. Dad rewrote the will. Garrett and Kendra got nothing. Mom still mails birthday cards I don't open. I'm here, in a house I bought with money I earned, eating dinner with Pop and building whatever I want in my garage. They had 13 years to be family. They passed. Now they get the version of me that doesn't care. Pop glanced over his book. You good? Yeah, I'm good. And for once, I meant it. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. I built Dad's business from the ground up after dropping out of uni, while my golden brother went on to study and work in finance. After 7 years of grinding, my dad wanted to give my brother half of everything I worked hard for. I went scorched earth. All right, Reddit. So I spent 7 years turning my dad's dying $300,000 shop into an $8 million empire. Then he brought in my finance bro brother, who'd never held a wrench, to be my CEO at the same salary. So I took the clients, the crew, and started my own shop 3 miles away. Now I'm pulling $1.2 million monthly while they face karma. Grab some popcorn and enjoy the chaos. My old man started Rodriguez Heavy Equipment Repair in 1989, back when a handshake meant something, and your reputation was the only marketing you needed. 36 years of crawling under excavators, rebuilding transmissions, and keeping construction companies running. I, 32 male, grew up in that shop. Started at 11, sweeping floors and organizing bolts. By 14, I could diagnose a failing hydraulic pump by sound alone. Spent every summer and weekend there while my older brother Drew was off doing whatever golden children do. Soccer camps, SAT prep, networking events, apparently. Drew's 38 now, 6 years older than me. Always been mom and dad's pride and joy. The one who made it out, got his finance degree from a decent university, landed a job at some investment firm downtown. Dad used to show off Drew's business cards at family gatherings like they were Olympic medals. Meanwhile, I'd show up with diesel fuel on my boots and get asked when I was going to do something real with my life. I tried the college thing. Really did. Enrolled in mechanical engineering with a business minor, figured I'd come back with credentials that'd make Dad respect what I was doing. Lasted exactly 1 semester. Sitting in lecture halls while some professor who'd never held a wrench explained theoretical load distributions felt like a waste of time I didn't have. The shop needed help. Dad was drowning in work and couldn't afford to hire anyone decent. So I dropped out, told Dad I wanted in for real, and he said the magic words, "Stick with me, kid. Build this thing right, and someday it'll be yours." That was 7 years ago, 2018. The shop was pulling maybe $300,000 annually. Dad was working himself to death, and we had 3 part-time mechanics who showed up when they felt like it. Our fleet was one van that broke down more than the equipment we serviced. I changed everything. First move, specialize. Dad took any job that walked through the door, fixing some farmer's tractor, servicing a contractor's pickup, whatever. I said no. We went industrial only. Construction equipment, mining rigs, municipal vehicles, commercial fleets. Companies with maintenance budgets and recurring contracts, not one-off jobs paying peanuts. Then I pitched a concept that sounded insane. 24/7 emergency service. Every other shop in the area closed at 5. But construction companies need their loaders running at 6 a.m. Mines operate around the clock. Logistics companies can't afford downtime. So we started offering after-hours emergency repairs at premium rates. Double for nights, triple for holidays. Suddenly, every site foreman in 3 counties had my cell number. Within 18 months, we went from 1 van to 8. From 3 unreliable guys to 20 solid mechanics. I implemented digital work orders, GPS tracking on the service vehicles, and inventory management that actually made sense. Dad kept working on tools because he couldn't help himself, but I was running everything else. Sales, operations, crew management, client relations. The older mechanics tested me hard at first. Some kid in his 20s telling veterans how to run jobs? Yeah, that went over great, but I shut them up fast. By year 4, we hit 40 employees and 12 service trucks. Revenue jumped from $300,000 to $4.2 million. By year 6, we were pushing $8 million annually with 53 employees and 18 vehicles. $8 million. Dad and I were both drawing $160,000 salaries, more than double what he'd made before, but we weren't exactly rich. Most profit got reinvested, but we were building something real. Our client retention rate was 94%. When companies needed emergency service, they called us first. The crew respected me because I never asked them to do anything I wouldn't do myself. I'd taught most of them advanced hydraulics diagnostics. Drew, meanwhile, was living his best life downtown. Nice condo, nice car, nice suits. He'd visit maybe twice a year, usually around holidays, always making these subtle comments about how I should have finished my education or developed some professional ambition. Professional ambition. Right. Like turning a struggling $300,000 operation into an $8 million company while he shuffled Excel sheets wasn't ambitious enough. My girlfriend Jen, now fiance, but we'll get there, actually understood what I did. When I'd come home at midnight smelling like hydraulic fluid, she'd just laugh and throw my clothes straight in the wash. Her dad ran a plumbing company, so she got it. She respected the work. Mom and Dad? They hated her from day one. She's not refined enough, Mom said once. Translation. Jen grew up working class, didn't do the whole pageant smile thing, and wasn't impressed by Dad's stories about the family legacy. At family dinners, Mom would ask pointed questions about Jen's career trajectory and whether she'd be continuing to work after marriage. Dad barely acknowledged her existence. What they really wanted was for Drew to give them grandchildren. Mom dropped hints constantly, showed Drew pictures of his friends' kids, talked about how nice it would be to have little ones around before they got too old. Then came Dad's 67th birthday dinner 3 months ago. That's when everything went sideways. We're all there, me, Jen, Drew, Mom, Dad, at this nice steakhouse Dad likes. Dad orders his 3rd drink and starts talking numbers. Mentions the shop's doing nearly $8 million now. Mentions his declining health. The decades of asbestos exposure are catching up, plus arthritis in both hands. Drew perks up like a hunting dog catching scent. $8 million? Seriously? Gross revenue, I clarify. Margins aren't huge after costs. But Drew's already doing math in his head. I can see it. And Dad's got this look like he's about to announce something big. I've been thinking about succession, Dad says. About legacy. About family. Here we go. Drew, I know you've done well in finance. Built yourself a good career. But I was hoping you might consider coming home, working with your brother, building this business together. Drew actually laughs. Dad, I appreciate the thought, but I make $180,000 a year managing portfolios. I'm not exactly looking to get my hands dirty. You wouldn't have to, Dad says, leaning forward. That's what your brother does. I'm talking about bringing real business strategy to the operation, proper financial management, growth planning. And just like that, I see where this is heading. We could professionalize the whole operation, Drew continues, warming to the idea now. Bring in systems, processes, scale it properly. With my financial background and management experience, the business has scaled just fine, I interrupt. We went from $300,000 to $8 million in 7 years. That's impressive, Drew says with that condescending smile he does. But there's a difference between working hard and working smart. Dad built a great foundation, but without proper business framework, I implemented the framework. Every system we use, every process, every client contract, I built that. Mom jumps in. Drew has education, sweetheart. He understands corporate strategy in ways you couldn't possibly. Because I dropped out. Awkward silence. Jen squeezes my hand under the table. Dad's looking excited, Mom's looking smug, Drew's looking like he just discovered a $20 bill in his pocket. Let's talk more about this, Dad says. I think having both my sons working together could be something special. A real family business. I should have seen it coming. Should have known Dad's "someday this'll be yours" promise had an expiration date. But I actually believed him. I'd earned it. I'd built it. That had to count for something. Turns out blood counts more. And Drew's blood apparently came with a business degree, which made it premium vintage. The calls started the next day. Dad wanting to explore the opportunity. Drew sending me articles about family business succession planning. Mom talking about how wonderful it would be to have both sons working together, how it was Dad's dream come true. Nobody asked what I wanted. Nobody mentioned that I'd spent 7 years building this empire while Drew collected paychecks somewhere else. But hey, family's family, right? 2 weeks later, Dad called a formal meeting with lawyers. That's when I knew I was screwed. Dad's estate attorney sat behind a mahogany desk with documents stacked like artillery shells. I walked in expecting a conversation about eventually buying Dad out, maybe discussing partnership terms. What I got was a corporate execution disguised as a family reunion. Dad started with the softening up routine, talked about legacy, about keeping the business in the family, about his dream of seeing his sons work together. Drew sat there in his Brooks Brothers suit, looking like he was attending a board meeting at Goldman Sachs instead of discussing a diesel repair shop. Then the attorney slid paperwork across the desk. The proposal. Dad would transition ownership over the next 12 months. Final split, 45% to Drew, 45% to me, 10% retained by Dad as advisory shares. Drew would come on as CEO at $210,000 annually. I'd be COO, Chief Operating Officer, which sounds important until you realize it means doing all the actual work while someone else gets credit. This structure provides optimal management efficiency, the attorney explained in that bloodless voice. Drew's financial expertise combined with your operational knowledge creates complementary leadership. Complementary, like I was the sidekick in my own story. Drew will handle strategic planning, financial management, and business development, Dad continued. You'll manage the day-to-day operations, crew oversight, the technical side. So I do what I've been doing, I said slowly. And Drew does. What exactly? Executive leadership, Drew said. Setting direction, building frameworks, managing growth strategy. The things that require MBA-level thinking. MBA-level thinking. About a business he'd never worked in. Serving clients he'd never met. In an industry he didn't understand. I've already drafted a 5-year growth plan, Drew added, pulling out his own document. Standardization of service protocols, expansion into 3 additional markets, implementation of 6 Sigma quality management. 6 Sigma? We fix excavators, not manufacture semiconductors. That attitude is exactly why we need professional management. Drew smiled like he was explaining arithmetic to a child. Dad built something great here, and you've done solid work maintaining it. But to really scale, I scaled it. From 300,000 to 8 million. That was me. Using Dad's foundation, Mom interjected. She'd been quiet until now, lurking in the corner like a spider. You had every advantage. His reputation, his client base, his facilities. Drew's building his success from scratch in a competitive industry. From scratch. In a competitive industry. As if I'd inherited a thriving empire instead of a struggling shop that barely covered rent. What happens if I say no? I asked. The room went cold. Dad looked uncomfortable. Drew looked annoyed. The attorney looked like this wasn't his first succession fight. Then I sell to a third party, Dad said quietly. I'm 67, son. My lungs are shot. Arthritis is getting worse. I need to transition this business before I can't anymore. Either it stays in the family, or it doesn't. Family means both sons, Mom added. Not just one. There it was. The ultimatum wrapped in emotional manipulation. Accept Drew as my boss. Or watch Dad sell the business I'd built to strangers. And the salary split? I asked the attorney. Why does Drew get the same as me when I've been here 7 years, and he's been here 7 minutes? Executive positions command commensurate compensation, the attorney said. CEO and COO roles traditionally align in similarly sized operations. Plus, Drew added, leaning back in his chair, I'm taking a pay cut from my current position. Leaving $180,000 to come make $210,000 is barely an upgrade when you factor in career risk. Career risk. Coming to run a business that was already successful. Career risk. I wanted to flip the table. Instead, I nodded, smiled, asked a few clarifying questions. Told them I needed time to think. Don't take too long, Dad said as I stood to leave. I'd like this resolved before the holidays. Walking out, I called Jen. We need to talk. How bad? Nuclear. Next morning, I called Dad. I've thought about it. Let's move forward with the plan. Dad sounded relieved, excited even. That's wonderful, son. Drew's already putting together onboarding materials. He's very thorough. I'm sure he is. Oh, and one more thing. Drew mentioned it might be good if you dressed more professionally when he starts. Business casual at minimum. First impressions matter when we're building this new structure. Business casual. At a diesel repair shop where I spent half my time under vehicles. Business casual, so I'd look executive before what? Sure, Dad. Whatever Drew thinks is best. I hung up and immediately started planning my exit. Because forget this entire situation. But first, I needed to understand exactly how much damage I could do on my way out. Drew's first day at Rodriguez Heavy Equipment Repair looked like a LinkedIn influencer's fantasy. He showed up in slate gray slacks, a pressed button-down, and leather dress shoes that probably cost more than my truck payment, to a shop where we service mining equipment, where the concept of staying clean is a cruel joke the universe plays on mechanics. Dad gave him the full tour, introducing him to every crew member like he was presenting the crown prince to his subjects. This is my son Drew. He'll be helping us take the company to the next level. Most of the guys just nodded, shook his hand, went back to work. But I saw the looks, the raised eyebrows. Big Tommy, my lead foreman who'd been with me since year 2, caught my eye and made a subtle, what the heck gesture. Drew's tour lasted about 30 minutes before he retreated to the office we'd cleared out for him. Within an hour, he'd rearranged the furniture and was on a call with some consultant about operational optimization. I spent the day working on a transmission rebuild for one of our mining clients. Around 3 p.m., Drew emerged from his office, carefully stepping around oil stains like they might attack him. Hey, can we talk about the crew's scheduling inefficiencies? He called over the pneumatic tools. I wiped my hands on a rag. What inefficiencies? Well, I've been reviewing the logs, and there's significant variance in job completion times. Some jobs that should take 2 hours are taking 4. That's unacceptable. Those are estimates. Real-world repairs don't follow a spreadsheet. With proper training and standardization, these guys are master mechanics with decades of experience. They're not the problem. Drew frowned. Then what is? Nothing. We complete 96% of jobs at or under estimated time. That's industry leading. According to whose metrics? According to having actual experience in this industry. Tense silence. A few mechanics pretended not to watch while absolutely watching. Look, Drew said, lowering his voice slightly. I get that this is an adjustment, but Dad brought me in for a reason. I have skills you don't. And if we're going to work together, you mean if I'm going to work under you? I mean if we're going to build something bigger than either of us could alone. Corporate buzzword bingo. He'd hit 3 cliches in one sentence. Impressive, really. That evening, Dad called me into his office. Mom was there too. Never a good sign. Drew mentioned you were resistant today, Dad started. I answered his questions. With an attitude, Mom added. He's trying to help. The least you could do is show some respect. Respect? For a guy who'd worked exactly 0 days in this industry, who couldn't diagnose a blown head gasket if his life depended on it, who was being handed co-ownership of a business he'd contributed nothing to building. I'm trying to adjust, I said carefully. It's a big change. Speaking of change, Mom continued, Dad and I have been talking. Now that Drew's coming back and building his life here, we're hoping he'll settle down, start a family. Here we go. That's great, I said neutrally. We think it's time for grandchildren, before we're too old to enjoy them. She paused. Drew's at a good place in life for that. Stable, mature, ready to be a father. The implication hung there like hydraulic smoke. Drew was the suitable parent. Drew would provide the acceptable grandchildren. I was the perpetual screw-up with the unrefined girlfriend who wore jeans to family dinner. Jen and I are engaged, I said. We're thinking of setting a date. Mom's face did something complicated. That's your choice. We just think Drew's path might be more aligned with what this family needs right now. This family needs grandkids through the right son. Got it. Don't be dramatic, Dad said. Your mother's just expressing that Drew's in a more stable position. Because he didn't waste his life in a shop, I finished. Yeah, I understand perfectly. I left before saying something I'd regret, or something I wouldn't regret, which was more likely. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in corporate colonization. Drew implemented morning stand-up meetings where mechanics had to report their planned activities for the day. He introduced a process improvement submission system that nobody used. He hired a business consultant at $15,000 for a 3-month contract to assess our operational efficiency. The crew was miserable. Tommy came to me at the end of week 2. "Boss," he said. They all called me boss, not Drew. "What the heck is happening? Half the guys are looking for other jobs. This corporate nonsense doesn't work in our business." "I know." "Then do something." "I'm working on it." What I was working on. An exit strategy that would crater their operations so thoroughly they'd feel it for years. I started with client meetings, casual check-ins with our major accounts, the relationships I'd built personally over 7 years. Mentioned I might be making some moves soon, asked if they'd be interested in continuing to work with me specifically. 8 out of 10 said yes immediately. These weren't Dad's clients. They were mine. Then I approached the crew, individually, carefully, starting with the guys I trusted most. Asked if they'd be interested in jumping ship if I started something new. 12 mechanics said yes within a week. The best ones. The guys who could handle complex hydraulics, electrical diagnostics, the skilled work that separated great shops from mediocre ones. Found a warehouse space 3 miles away. Smaller than our current facility, but enough to start. Used most of my savings plus a $150,000 loan from Jen's dad, who understood the situation better than my own parents, to lease the space and buy basic equipment. The whole time I smiled, nodded, went along with Drew's idiotic initiatives, wore the business casual clothes Dad requested, played the obedient little brother role. 3 weeks later, I was ready. Everything lined up. Clients secured, crew committed, space leased, equipment purchased. Time to introduce Drew to the concept of consequences. I picked a Monday morning for maximum impact. Drew had scheduled one of his ridiculous strategic planning sessions for 9 a.m., which meant the whole crew would be there watching him prattle on about synergies or whatever. I arrived at 7 earlier than usual. Dad was already there, old habits die hard, working on something in Bay 3. "Morning," I said. "Morning, son. Coffee's fresh. Actually, I need to talk to you about something." We went to his office. I had a folder with me, my resignation letter, copies of my new business registration, the lease agreement for my warehouse, and a list of the clients who'd committed to moving with me. Professional, clean, undeniable. "I'm leaving," I said. "Starting my own shop. Most of your major clients are coming with me, along with 12 of our best mechanics. Here's my formal notice." Dad just stared at the documents like they were written in a foreign language. "You're what?" "Leaving. I'm not going to spend the next 30 years playing second fiddle to someone who doesn't know a hydraulic pump from a hole in the ground. These clients?" Dad's voice went hollow. "That's Morrison Construction, Bridgeport Patterson Mining. These are our biggest." "They're my clients, Dad. I built those relationships. They trust me, not the company name. And they've agreed to move their business to my new operation. This is theft. It's competition. You wanted Drew to bring professional business practices? Well, here's one. Non-compete clauses. You never had me sign one. Neither did the mechanics. So legally, ethically, I'm in the clear." Dad's face went red. "After everything I did for you, you gave me a job. I turned it into an empire. There's a difference. I was going to give you half. You were going to give me 45%, same as the guy who showed up last month with 0 experience, and you were going to make him my boss. That's not a gift. That's an insult." The door opened. Drew walked in, saw the document spread across Dad's desk, and his expression went from confused to furious in about 2 seconds. "What's this?" "Your brother's betraying us," Dad said. "I'm competing with you." Again, there's a difference. Drew snatched up my client list. "You can't just steal our accounts." "Watch me. I built those relationships over 7 years while you were moving money around in spreadsheets. They're coming with me because they value competence. This is sabotage. We'll sue you for what? Starting a business in an industry I know? You'd lose, and you know it. No non-compete, no confidentiality agreements, no proprietary trade secrets. Dad never believed in that corporate nonsense, remember?" Drew looked at Dad like he'd just realized his father was an idiot. "You didn't have him sign a non-compete?" "I trusted him," Dad said quietly. "Yeah, well, trust doesn't mean much when he's stealing our business," Drew shot back. "I'm not stealing anything. I'm taking what's mine." By now, other mechanics were arriving for the morning shift. Tommy poked his head in, saw the situation, and gave me a slight nod. I walked out of the office and addressed the crew. 12 guys who'd been with me for years, who knew this moment was coming. "Morning, everyone. Quick announcement. I'm leaving to start my own operation. For those of you who've already committed to joining me, we start at the new facility Wednesday morning. For everyone else, no hard feelings. You're good mechanics, and I respect whatever choice you make. Dead silence. Then Tommy spoke up. What's the address, boss? I gave it. 11 other mechanics pulled out their phones and typed it in. Drew burst out of the office. You can't do this! You're destroying the business! Mom appeared. She'd been in the back office somewhere, probably listening to the whole thing. Her face was cold fury. You ungrateful little... Careful, Mom. Wouldn't want to say something you can't take back. After everything we gave you, everything we sacrificed. This is about that girl, isn't it? Mom's voice dropped to a sneer. She's been in your ear, telling you deserve more. Jen's the only person who actually supported what I built. Unlike my family. She's not family, Mom said. And she never will be. We wanted Drew to give us grandchildren because at least we know they'd be raised right. There it was. Everything they'd been implying for months finally said out loud. I was the expendable son with the wrong girlfriend, and Drew was the golden child who'd provide acceptable heirs. Well, enjoy Drew's hypothetical grandkids, I said. I'll enjoy my actual business. I walked out. Tommy and the others followed. We loaded our personal tools into trucks and left without another word. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. Drew was standing in the parking lot, suit already dirty from who knows what, looking like a man who just realized his executive position came with actual work attached. Dad stood in the doorway of the shop, looking 10 years older than he had that morning. Mom was on her phone, probably calling relatives to complain about my betrayal. And me? I felt lighter than I had in months. The weight of expectation, of family obligation, of playing the grateful little brother, all of it gone. Time to build something real, something mine, something they couldn't take away because they decided the wrong son deserved it. Rodriguez Heavy Equipment Repair opened for business, Wednesday at 6 a.m., 4 service bays, 12 mechanics, enough equipment to handle our initial client load, and 0 corporate nonsense. By noon, we'd completed 4 jobs. By the end of week 1, we were booked solid for 3 weeks out. Morrison Construction transferred their entire fleet maintenance contract, worth $1.8 million annually, on day 3. Bridgeport followed. Patterson Mining called personally to confirm they were moving all their business over. Turns out when you build real relationships, clients follow the person, not the company name. Who knew? The crew worked their tails off, but they were smiling. I paid them 18% more than the old shop, gave them better schedules, and treated them like the skilled professionals they were instead of cogs in some corporate machine. Within 3 weeks, I hired 4 more mechanics. Within 6 weeks, we'd leased additional space in the building next door and expanded to 6 bays. The loan from Jen's dad was for $150,000 over 3 years, but at our current growth rate, I'd have it paid back in 14 months. Meanwhile, the old shop was hemorrhaging. I heard through industry contacts that they'd lost 3 more mechanics in the first month, guys who weren't thrilled about Drew's process improvement initiatives or his habit of explaining their own jobs to them. My phone exploded with calls from my family. Dad called 53 times in the first week. Mom left voicemails ranging from angry to guilt-trippy to borderline hysterical. Drew sent emails with subject lines like legal consequences and theft of proprietary information that his lawyer probably told him not to send. I ignored all of them because I was too busy building something that actually worked. Jen and I set a wedding date. Next summer, small ceremony, just close friends and her family. My family wasn't invited. That conversation with Mom about being raised right had burned whatever bridge was left. 3 months in, we hit $420,000 in monthly revenue, hired 6 more mechanics, upgraded our equipment, implemented a trainee program for younger guys wanting to learn the trade. The business I'd envisioned, based on skill, respect, and actually giving a darn about the work, was becoming real. Around month 4, I got a voicemail from Drew. His voice sounded different, tired, defeated. We need to talk. Please, it's urgent. I deleted it. 2 days later, another voicemail. This time from Dad, and he sounded worse than I'd ever heard him. Son, please call me back. We made mistakes. We need help. I almost called back. Almost. But then I remembered. Everyone's replaceable. That's what Drew said. You had advantages, Dad said. She'll never be family, Mom said. So I let the voicemail sit there, unplayed, while I got back to work. Month 5, my cousin Alex called. Dude, your dad's shop is dying. They're down to maybe 20 employees, lost most of their major clients, and Drew apparently had a complete meltdown last week. Screamed at a mechanic for suggesting a repair approach, and the guy just walked out. Sounds like optimal operational efficiency to me. Your dad's asking about you. Wants to know if you'd consider talking. About what? Coming back? Being the savior after they tried to screw me? I don't think that's what he wants. I think he's just realizing how badly he messed up. Little late for that. That's when Alex called again at 2 in the morning. Your dad collapsed at the shop, Alex said without preamble. He's at Memorial Hospital. It's bad. I was out of bed before I'd fully processed the words. Jen grabbed her keys without asking questions. 20 minutes later, we were in the ER waiting room. Mom was there, looking like she'd aged 10 years and 6 months. When she saw me, her face crumpled. Not the manipulative tears from before. These were real. They think it's a heart attack, she said, combined with the asbestosis complications. He's in surgery now. Where's Drew? Her face hardened. I called him 4 hours ago. He said he'd come, but nothing. We waited. Finally, a doctor emerged. Mr. Rodriguez is stable, but barely. The heart attack was severe. Combined with his existing lung damage, we're looking at extensive care requirements. He'll need monitoring, medication, potentially home oxygen. The costs will be significant. How significant? Mom asked. Initial hospitalization will run about $180,000. Ongoing treatment could be $5,000 to $10,000 monthly depending on complications. Mom went pale. We don't have that. The business is failing. We already sold the house to cover debts. The doctor looked sympathetic but firm. We can discuss payment plans. He'll need surgery within the week. A cardiac procedure that's another $90,000 minimum. Without it, his survival odds drop significantly. I'll cover the medical bills, I said. All of them. Mom's head snapped up. What? You heard me. Dad's medical care. I'll pay for it. But I have conditions. Anything, she whispered. First, this is for Dad's medical bills. Nothing else. Not the house, not the business, not Drew's problems. Second, I set up the accounts directly with the hospital and pharmacy. You don't see a dime of cash. Dad survived the surgery. Came out of recovery looking like death rewarmed. Tubes everywhere. Barely conscious. When he saw me, tears leaked from his eyes. You came, he whispered, for your health. That's it. I'm sorry. So sorry. You were right about everything. Yeah, I was. Drew finally showed up 3 days later when Dad was stable. Walked into the hospital room like he'd been there all along. How is he? Alive, I said. No thanks to you. Where were you? I had work commitments. I couldn't just drop everything. Dad almost died and you had work commitments. Got it. Mom's voice was ice. Your brother has been here every day, paying for everything. And you couldn't bother to show up for 3 days? Drew looked uncomfortable. I'm here now. That's what matters. Actually, it doesn't, I said. Per the arrangement, you contribute to Dad's care or you don't get to play concerned son. What's your contribution? I don't have that kind of money right now. Then get out. Drew left. Mom didn't stop him. That's when I knew something had shifted. Over the next 2 weeks, I paid $287,000 for Dad's care. Set up automated payments for his medications. $4,800 monthly. Arranged home oxygen, physical therapy, cardiac monitoring. Everything through accounts I controlled directly. Drew called once, demanding I stop poisoning Mom against him. I hung up. He tried showing up at my shop. Tommy and 2 other mechanics escorted him off the property with a clear message. Come back, deal with cops. Dad stabilized over the following months. I kept paying his medical bills. Kept my word on that. But the boundaries held firm. No family gatherings, no we should talk conversations. Just automated payments to keep him alive and nothing more. My business kept growing. Hit $750,000 monthly revenue by month 9. Landed 3 major mining contracts and a municipal maintenance deal worth $2.3 million annually. Employed 42 people, ran 20 service vehicles, and had a waiting list of companies wanting our services. Jen and I moved the wedding up when we found out she was pregnant. Married her in her parents' backyard on a perfect October afternoon. Small ceremony, maybe 50 people, all of them actual friends or family that mattered. Her dad gave a toast about integrity, about men who understand responsibility and follow through. Drew's spiral continued. Heard through Alex that he'd moved back home with our parents into their small rental. Took a job at some regional firm, making barely $70,000. His LinkedIn profile stopped getting updates. The guy who was supposed to bring MBA-level thinking to a diesel shop was delivering pizzas on weekends to cover rent. Some lessons cost more than others. Our daughter was born on a freezing January morning. 7 pounds, healthy, perfect. We named her Elena after Jen's grandmother. When I held her for the first time, something fundamental shifted. This was real family. Not obligation, not DNA, not guilt. Just choice and love, and building something worth protecting. Dad called 3 months after Elena was born. I almost didn't answer. I heard you had a baby, he said. His voice was stronger now. Treatment's working. Congratulations. Thanks. I don't expect to meet her. I know the boundaries. But I wanted to say, you're going to be a better father than I was. You already are. Silence hit hard. Real recognition from a man who'd spent years not seeing me. Drew asked me for money last week, Dad continued. Said he needed help with bills. I told him no. Told him some people earn help. Others just expect it. Good. I don't deserve forgiveness. But you were right about everything. And I'm proud of what you built. But because it's real. We talked for 10 more minutes. No tears, no reconciliation. Just acknowledgement. 2 years later, Rodriguez Heavy Equipment Repair hit $1.2 million in monthly revenue. 53 employees, 23 service vehicles, 14 major contracts. Business equity north of $5 million. Drew's life kept spiraling. Lost another job. Moved back home with mom and dad into their small rental. Last I heard, he was delivering pizzas on weekends to make rent. The guy who was supposed to professionalize a diesel shop couldn't professionalize his own life. Some lessons cost everything. Elena turned 2. Smart kid, loved the shop, loved watching mechanics work. Jen was pregnant again. A boy. We'd named him Daniel after her grandfather. Real family. Built on choice and love, not obligation. Mom sends birthday cards. Never pushes boundaries. Never asks to visit. Just acknowledges from a distance that she lost something irreplaceable. When I look at Elena, at Jen, at the crew who believed in me from day one, and I know, respect is earned, actions have consequences, and walking away from people who don't value you isn't cruelty. It's self-preservation. The shop opens at 6 a.m. I'm usually there by 5:30, coffee in hand, Elena's drawing taped to my office wall. The crew rolls in, work begins, another day of building something real with people who matter. That's the legacy Dad never understood. It's not about passing down a business. It's about teaching your kids their worth isn't negotiable, their boundaries aren't suggestions, and family is who shows up. Elena will learn that. Daniel too. They'll know respect is earned, not given. The Rodriguez name lives on, just not with the people who thought they owned it. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. My parents refused to pay for my dream college because it's not fair to my sister. They cut me off, funded her cheating, and told everyone I abandoned them. When the truth came out, I didn't say a word. My success spoke loud enough. Hey, Reddit. My family treated my sister like a celebrity and treated me like I was furniture that occasionally paid bills. So I said, cool, enjoy the show, packed my stuff, and built a life without them. Turns out they weren't done being unhinged. Buckle up, this one gets loud. Name's Leon. I'm 26 now, working as a design engineer in a company that actually appreciates having someone who can solve problems without crying about it. I wasn't born with that confidence. I earned it the slow way. But if you want to understand why my patience for disrespect is basically dead, you gotta meet the people who raised me. My parents are Hank and Abigail. Picture 2 people who think they're running a royal bloodline instead of a normal household. And their chosen heir? My older sister, Ada. According to them, she was basically one miracle short of walking on water. If she blinked, they bragged. If I built something cool, they acted like I was rearranging chairs. She's older, and after a medical leave, our parents never called what it was. Being held back, Ada and I ended up in the same grade. That meant we applied the same year. I wasn't mistreated in the after-school special way. It was quieter. Ada got the spotlight. I got the wall behind the spotlight. She loved it. Attention was her oxygen. I swear she couldn't function unless people were clapping for something she didn't do. Meanwhile, my entire high school life was work mode. I spent late nights in the garage soldering boards, messing with circuits, building dumb prototypes because it helped me breathe. After school, I'd clock into my part-time job, stash whatever money I could, then go home and keep building until the sun hinted at showing up again. I didn't need praise. I just wanted out of that house and into something real. My dream school? This elite engineering program I'd obsessed over since freshman year. The kind of place where people actually build stuff and don't just talk about it. The brochures were taped inside my locker, like some kids' tape band posters. Ada's dream school? Whatever campus looked best on Hank's LinkedIn page. He bragged about her getting accepted months before she even applied. Abigail was the same. She acted like admissions officers were personally begging Ada to bless them with her presence. Ada obviously loved every second of it. She'd walk around telling people which dorm she'd probably pick, even though she hadn't been accepted anywhere. By spring, envelopes started showing up for both of us. This is where Hank and Abigail's favoritism went from annoying to clinically delusional. When I got my first acceptance letter, they didn't congratulate me. They didn't even look up. They just said, "Don't get ahead of yourself. We need to focus on Ada." I didn't argue. It wouldn't have mattered. You can't convince people who already decided what reality is. Then, the big one came. The envelope from my dream school. Partial scholarship. My hands were literally shaking opening it. And I'm not a hand-shaking type of guy. For the first time in forever, I felt like everything I'd done was actually worth something. I walked into the living room with the letter. Hank was watching TV. Abigail was scrolling her phone. Ada was practicing her future college girl laugh like she was auditioning for some show. I told them. Straight, simple. I got in, and they're giving me a partial scholarship. Nothing. Hank blinked like I'd interrupted a commercial. Abigail said, "That's nice, but let's wait on more important news." Ada rolled her eyes like my achievement was some kind of inconvenience. A few days later, Ada's letters arrived. First one, rejection. Second, rejection. Third, another rejection. Watching her face fall was like watching someone drop their phone in slow motion. She kept mumbling about how they must have mixed up the applications. Hank and Abigail refused to accept it. They tore into every excuse available. The system is broken. Admissions don't recognize real talent. They probably had a quota this year. Anything except, "Our daughter didn't work hard." Ada went full meltdown mode, crying, blaming the universe, blaming teachers, blaming the weather, basically anything that didn't involve looking at her transcript. She kept saying stuff like, "I don't understand how this could happen to me," as if rejection was for peasants. The house basically turned into a pressure cooker. You could feel the anger radiating off my parents like heat lamps. I kept to myself and minded my business, because I already knew this storm was headed in my direction. And I was right. The next morning, Hank walked into the kitchen with this dramatic sigh like he was about to announce a funeral schedule. He leaned on the counter, serious face locked in, and said, "We need a family talk." That was it. No context, no warm-up. Just the tone he uses when he's gearing up to say something stupid. I didn't say anything out loud, but in my head, I just went, "Perfect. Here comes the nonsense." Hank sat at the head like he paid rent for the air in the room. Abigail had her, "This is going to hurt me more than you" expression locked in, which was always a lie. And Ada? She looked like she was practicing her heartbroken victim face in a mirror all morning. I sat down, mostly because standing would have made it look like I cared. Hank cleared his throat. "Leon, we've talked it over. Your acceptance is complicated." I raised an eyebrow. "It's college, not a felony." He ignored that. "You going to that school right now would make Ada feel small. It would be cruel to take such a big step ahead of her when she's going through something difficult." Ada put her hand to her chest, like she'd been personally wounded by my existence. "It's just a lot, Leon. You know how much I wanted my school." I stared at her. "Okay, and what does that have to do with mine?" She flinched like I threw a brick, which honestly told me everything. Hank leaned in, doing that fatherly voice he uses when he's trying to sound wise instead of controlling. "A real man sacrifices for his family. You need to stay home, go to community college, help Ada find her footing. Once she's settled, we can revisit your plans." Abigail chimed in immediately. "It's not forever. Just 2 years. Stay close. Don't make your sister feel worse than she already does." I let them talk until they ran out of breath. Then I answered once, clearly, because I'm not the type who repeats himself like a broken speaker. "I worked for this. I earned it. The scholarship doesn't wait. And I'm not throwing away my future because Ada didn't get into her school." Abigail stiffened. "Leon, don't be selfish. You know how fragile she is right now." Ada sniffed dramatically. "You're choosing yourself over your family. You always think you're better." And I laughed once, short and sharp. "I don't think I'm better. I think I'm done living in your shadow." Hank's face went red instantly. "If you walk away from this family to chase some ego trip," "It's not an ego trip," I cut in. "It's my life." That pushed him over. He slammed his hand on the table. "Then you're on your own. No support. No help. Don't come back asking for anything." I sat back. "That's fine. They expected pleading. They expected me to crumble and beg for approval I never got anyway. When I didn't, their expressions cracked. Shock, anger, confusion, like they weren't prepared for a version of me that didn't fold." Abigail crossed her arms. "If you leave, don't expect to be part of this family." I shrugged. "You made that choice the second you tried to chain my future to Ada's ego." Ada scoffed. "See? You always act above us." I looked at her, completely calm. "Ada, I didn't take anything from you. You just didn't earn what you thought you were owed. She froze, and for a moment, the whole room stopped breathing. That was the true breaking point. Hank stood up like he wanted to throw me out right then. Abigail grabbed Ada protectively, like I'd said something violent instead of honest. And Ada just glared at me with this mix of hatred and insecurity that I'd seen 1,000 times, but never cared about until now. The meeting ended with them officially declaring I was cut off. No college money, no help, no contact. Just a cold dismissal from the people who were supposed to be in my corner. Graduation week for our class made everything even clearer. During senior week, they went all out for Ada's events. Balloons, gifts, photos with half the extended family. At my actual ceremony, they showed up late, stood in the back, didn't clap, didn't speak to me, and left before I even reached them. It was ridiculous how normal that felt. I packed what I had, mostly tools, clothes, and a laptop that already sounded like it had emphysema, and left for my new campus. No parade, no goodbye, no emotional scene. Just me stepping out the door and not looking back. The first night in my tiny dorm room, I sat on the mattress, looked around, and realized there was no safety net, no backup plan, no one to call if I screwed up. And honestly, for the first time in my life, that felt perfect. My dream school didn't waste time reminding me I wasn't in my hometown anymore. First week, I walked into a physics lecture and heard 3 kids arguing about which private high school produced better Ivy candidates. Meanwhile, I was sitting there with a secondhand backpack that squeaked when I opened it and a laptop that booted slower than my grandma walked. Didn't matter. I didn't come here to compete with trust funds. I came here to work. If they had money, I had stubbornness. That felt like a fair trade. To survive, I stacked jobs like I was collecting them. Morning shift at the dorm desk, tutoring freshmen who didn't know how to open MATLAB, lab assistant hours whenever a professor needed someone to do the work no one else wanted to touch. My schedule looked like a punishment list, but it paid rent and kept me fed. Classes were brutal, but my grades were solid. Eventually, one of the professors pulled me into his research lab after watching me fix a botched circuit in 5 minutes. Then an internship lined up from that connection. Nothing glamorous, but enough to make me feel like I'd finally caught momentum. For a while, things felt almost normal. Tired, but normal. Then Ada had to make sure everyone remembered she existed. One night, around 2 in the morning, I took a break from studying and opened my phone. Bad idea. The first thing on my feed was a massive text wall written by Ada, complete with crying emojis, dramatic line breaks, and the classic "I just want to be honest on here" opener. Her rant went something like, "Leon abandoned the family. He thinks he's better than us. He walked away when we needed him. Some people just don't have loyalty." Dozens of comments. Some were from old classmates who barely knew us, but loved siding with whoever yelled the loudest. Some were mutuals saying, "You deserve better, Queen." A few asked if I'd really run away. I stared at it and snorted. "Wow," I muttered. "Didn't know I died and became a villain off screen." Dark humor kept me from punching a wall, but it stuck in my head longer than I liked. It wasn't the post itself. It was how fast people believed her version. She wrote the script, and I wasn't even in the room to correct it. I went back to studying, because Rent didn't care about my public image. Then my laptop decided to betray me too. The thing had been coughing and wheezing for months. That night, it let out a sad click, screen froze, and then died like it was clocking out permanently. Finals week, projects due, lab reports half written, code half finished, and I had exactly $0 to fix it. I didn't panic. I just stared at it, breathed once, and said, "All right, guess we're doing this the hard way." I lived in the library for the next week. Literally. I slept there between study sessions, used loaner computers that felt older than I was, and tried to rebuild everything I lost. I dug through old drive backups, begged a TA to give me an extension, and worked on restoring my files like I was defusing a bomb. It was survival mode, but I didn't break. I didn't have the luxury to break. By the end of that week, I was running on caffeine, library air, and spite. My eyes looked like I hadn't slept in 10 years, but the work was done. Barely. I walked out of my last exam feeling like a ghost with decent grades. I made it to my dorm thinking I'd finally collapse. Instead, my phone buzzed. Ada. The text read, "I'm nearby. Come outside." I stared at it. Little dramatic for someone who supposedly hated me. I figured it was a prank from her friends, but when I stepped outside, she was standing there, arms crossed, designer jacket, wounded princess expression ready to go. A rideshare sat behind her with its blinkers on. She started with the soft approach. "Mom's been crying. Dad's furious. Are you really going to do this forever?" I leaned against the wall. "You disowned me." Don't act surprised I stayed gone. Her face twisted instantly. You always had to be better, Leon. You couldn't just let me have my thing. My thing, I said. Ada, I didn't take anything from you. You didn't get in. That's your problem, not mine. She stepped closer, voice rising. You wanted me to fail. You liked seeing me hurt. No, I said, calm. I wanted you to win, but I'm not shrinking my life so you feel tall. She looked away dramatically, like someone was filming. If you were a real brother, you'd come home, or transfer. I'm struggling. I shrugged. I'll help you study if you actually want help, but I'm not becoming your emotional crutch. She laughed, bitter and sharp. You're so selfish. You act like you're above us. I straightened. No, I'm just not controlled by you. Then I finished it, clean and cold. You don't miss me. You miss control. Ada's face went red. She spun around, stormed back to the car, slammed the door, and sped off like she had somewhere important to be. I watched the car disappear and thought, okay, she's panicking. Something's going on. After the night Ada ambushed me outside the dorms, I figured she'd cool off and leave me alone. Wrong. A few days later, she texted like nothing had happened. Hey, Leo, with a smiling emoji. Miss you. How are classes? I stared at the screen. The emoji was already a red flag. Ada didn't miss people. She missed utility. I answered with one word. Busy. She responded instantly. Aw, I'm glad you're doing okay. I've been thinking about you a lot. Right. Then she got to the real reason she reached out. Can you send me that lab write-up you mentioned last time? I'm taking a similar course and I'm dying over here. There it was. Not even subtle. No, I typed. Do your own work. 5 seconds later, her tone flipped like a switch she kept oiled. Wow, selfish. Same old Leon thinking he's too good to help. Dry humor kicked in. You asked me for cheat sheets, not a kidney. She left me on red, which was fine. The conversation was never about reconnecting. She wanted an academic crutch and expected me to play the role. 2 days later, Jillian, my cousin, messaged me. I'm pretty sure Ada's cheating, she wrote. She barely comes to class but somehow gets A's on everything. I wasn't surprised. Ada always treated effort like it was beneath her. But Jillian wasn't guessing. She sent screenshots from Ada's roommate. The roommate recognized a purchased paper Ada had recycled and forwarded receipts and messages from their shared group chat, plus emails where Ada arranged payments for quizzes and assignments. It wasn't subtle cheating. It was sloppy, lazy, and expensive. Exactly Ada's style. What do I do? Jillian asked. I told her the truth. Do what's right. I'm not getting involved. Jillian reported it to the Academic Integrity Office. They launched an investigation immediately. Meanwhile, Hank and Abigail were performing their usual double-life routine. I heard from someone back home that when parents at church asked how I was doing, Hank would smile like a proud politician and say, Leon's at a top engineering program. We always knew he'd make it. Cute. Considering the last thing he told me was to never come back. Abigail chimed in too. Our son's doing amazing. So dedicated. Dedicated? I was the kid they kicked out like a defective appliance. But apparently bragging rights mattered more than remembering their own words. The investigation into Ada's cheating took about a month, but the rumors started leaking early. Someone in the office knew someone who knew someone, and suddenly whispers spread across her campus. Ada panicked, and like clockwork, she blamed me. On social media, she posted, Funny how the second my brother leaves, he still manages to ruin my life. Must be nice trying to destroy your own family from miles away. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in a decade messaged me like I'd committed a federal crime. Why would you sabotage your sister? You always held grudges. Help her instead of tearing her down. I didn't respond to any of them. Explaining myself to people who get their facts from Ada was a waste of oxygen. The official decision dropped 2 weeks later. Ada was expelled for repeated academic dishonesty. The evidence was overwhelming. Paid essay services, purchased test answers, messages confirming she wasn't doing anything herself. Hank and Abigail reacted exactly how I expected. They went full meltdown. They hired lawyers. They claimed the school was targeting her. They cried to anyone who'd listen about unfair treatment. They called it a misunderstanding and harsh punishment for a young woman under stress. None of that worked. Ada was out. And then another piece of information slipped out, one that didn't surprise me but still managed to hit a nerve. Hank and Abigail weren't just aware of the cheating. They'd been paying for it, literally. They funded the essay services, the answer keys, the ghostwriters. They were trying to buy Ada a degree the same way they tried to buy her a future. And when the whole operation blew up, they acted like victims. Ada returned home with a dramatic announcement about how she was starting fresh at community college. Hank and Abigail spun it like she had chosen a humble, noble path. Our Ada is so strong, Abigail posted online. She's rebuilding herself, Hank told neighbors. No mention of the expulsion. No mention of the cheating. Definitely no mention of who paid for it. Their mess was on fire, but I wasn't part of it. I didn't owe them anything. Not explanations, not comfort, not silence. Meanwhile, I was preparing for my own graduation. Project deadlines, capstone presentations, and interview rounds were piling up. For the first time in a long time, my future felt like it was taking shape. I was exhausted, but everything I'd built was finally coming together. While they were sinking, I was climbing, and that contrast didn't feel like revenge. It felt like proof that walking away had been the right choice all along. I didn't know it yet, but my next challenge wasn't their chaos. It was the fight for the career I'd bled for. Graduation came faster than I expected. One minute I was sleeping in the library living off loaner computers, and the next I was standing in a cap and gown with an honors cord around my neck. It felt surreal, but also earned. Every late night, every shift, every insult from home, it all stacked into that moment. Hank and Abigail didn't show, obviously. No congratulations, no, we're proud of you, not even a lazy text. They attended Ada's elementary school honors assembly with more enthusiasm than they ever showed for my degree. I took the diploma, nodded at the applause, and walked out without looking for faces that were never going to be there. A week later, I got the email I'd been grinding for since freshman year. A job offer from one of the top engineering firms in the country. The kind of place Hank used to name drop when bragging about successful people he knew. The irony wasn't lost on me. The offer was good: salary, relocation stipend, benefits, the works. I accepted, signed the onboarding forms, and thought for once something in my life was going to be simple. Of course it wasn't. 2 days before my start date, HR sent the standard background check form asking for my residential address history and an emergency contact. I listed no contact for family and used a friend as my emergency contact. The screening vendor followed up politely, asking for a simple verification of long-term independence. I kept it short. My parents disowned me when I went to college. We're not in contact. I gave them my campus housing supervisor as a reference. 48 hours later, background check cleared, see you Monday. I didn't celebrate. I just exhaled and moved forward. I moved to a new city. Small apartment, cheap furniture, neighborhood that smelled like old coffee and ambition. I started the job with the same energy I'd had in college. Outwork everyone and don't complain. It paid off. Within the first year, I went from entry level to leading a small team. By the second year, I was managing my own project. When you grow up with parents who treat you like wallpaper, hearing coworkers actually value your input feels almost foreign. Life was steady until one random weekend at the grocery store. I ran into someone from my hometown, Matt, a guy I used to sit with in physics. We weren't close, but we weren't enemies. He spotted me in the checkout line. Leon? Dude, no way. He looked me up and down like he'd discovered a rare animal. Heard you moved out here. So you really left your family behind, huh? I blinked. That's what you heard? He shrugged. Ada said you abandoned them, that you wanted nothing to do with them. I let out a short laugh. Funny. They disowned me. Not the other way around. He froze. Seriously, I said. They told me not to come back when I chose my college. Ada didn't want anyone outshining her. They supported her cheating. She got expelled, and somehow I became the villain. Matt looked uncomfortable, like he'd just realized he'd sided with the wrong movie character. Man, that's not what anybody back home says. Yeah, I said, because they only hear Ada's script. He didn't have anything else to add. He just nodded, muttered a "sorry, dude," and wheeled his cart away. That moment didn't make me angry. It just confirmed how far their lies had spread. Months rolled into years. Promotions came. My apartment got nicer. My life stopped feeling like something I had to defend. Jillian kept me updated about Ada, usually with messages that started with, "You won't believe this." According to her, Ada bounced around community college classes, quitting half of them, blaming professors for not understanding her potential. Hank and Abigail smothered her with support, acting like she was too special for normal expectations. It didn't surprise me. They built her a world with no consequences. She stayed in it. I didn't hear a word from my parents directly. Not on birthdays, not during holidays, not when I got promoted, not ever. Silence became the default. Then one day, Jillian sent a message. Ada's finally finishing her associate degree. They're throwing a huge party. Everyone's acting like she overcame some massive hardship. I laughed under my breath. Of course they are. A parade for cleaning up the mess they created. Classic. Jillian added, They're telling everyone it's a big family milestone. Your name's coming up. That got my attention. My family loved rewriting history. They'd been doing it since the day I left, but I wasn't 18 anymore, and I wasn't letting them keep authorship of my life story. I wasn't going back, but I also wasn't staying silent. The truth had been buried long enough. Ada's community college graduation party landed on a Saturday. I was supposed to be relaxing after a 60-hour work week. Instead, my phone buzzed nonstop like it owed me money. Jillian was the first to break through the notifications. "Leon, they're dragging you again," her message started. "It's bad. They're rewriting everything." I replied, "Define everything." She called instead of typing, which was already a sign things were stupid. "You're the villain," she said. "They're telling everyone you abandoned the family, refused to help Ada when she struggled in a toxic school environment, and that you cut ties because you think you're too good." I sighed. Of course. But Jillian wasn't done. "They're saying Ada chose community college to find herself, and that you're jealous she stayed close to family." I laughed under my breath. Dark humor kept my blood pressure down. "Jealous of Ada's academic speedrun to probation? Sure. Leon, I'm serious. People are believing them. Even relatives who know better are nodding along because Hank and Abigail are acting like their version is gospel." I didn't raise my voice, didn't get heated. I just said, "Time to fix the narrative." She exhaled. "You're really gonna do it?" "Oh yeah," I said. "If they want an audience, I'll give them a performance." I hung up, opened the old family group chat that had been dead silent toward me for years, and typed a message. No anger, no theatrics, just facts sharpened into something clean and lethal. "Since you're all rewriting my life again, here's the real version so you don't choke on the lies later. My parents disowned me because I refused to give up my dream school for Ada. Ada didn't choose community college. She was expelled for cheating. She paid for papers and online exams. Hank and Abigail helped fund it. There's a formal finding from her university's academic integrity office. The documentation exists. That's why she ended up back home. Not self-discovery, not a humble restart. Expulsion. I didn't send it yet. I added one more line. As for me, since you keep pretending I disappeared, I've been promoted again. I'm leading a major engineering division at the company you used to brag about, Hank. The one you said, only the best get into. I guess I did. Then I hit send. No typing bubbles, no instant responses, just dead stillness in the chat. Jillian texted me immediately. "Oh my God, Leon." The room just froze. Apparently someone at the party had the group chat open, and they read my message out loud. Not dramatically, just quiet, like tossing a grenade onto a dinner table. Jillian gave me the play-by-play through rapid-fire texts. Everyone stopped talking. Hank looks like he swallowed a stapler. Abigail's face is white. Ada is crying, but also yelling? Hard to tell. People are whispering. Your uncle just asked, "Is this true?" And nobody answered. Then, chaos. Full chaos. People are arguing. Someone left early. And I leaned back in my chair, staring at my phone like it was a window into the circus. Another message came. Hank is saying this is a misunderstanding. No one believes him. Abigail is blaming stress. Ada is yelling that you ruined her life by airing private matters. Someone asked why they lied for years. They walked away. I didn't feel triumphant or angry. Just done. Completely done with that fantasy world they kept trying to drag me into. 10 minutes later, the group chat finally woke up. Abigail. "How dare you do this tonight of all nights?" Hank, you had no right to humiliate your sister. Ada. "I hope you're happy. You always wanted to destroy me. You're sick, Leon. Sick." I muted the chat. Didn't bother responding. Their anger wasn't new. It was just louder because their audience finally heard the truth. Jillian texted again. "People are leaving. A few relatives pulled me aside and said they had questions about your parents for years." Then, "Leon, I think you just blew up the entire family mythology." I typed back, "Wasn't much of a mythology. Just a long-running delusion." She sent a laughing emoji, then a serious one. "You did the right thing. They've been lying forever." After that, the night quieted down. I went back to cleaning my apartment like nothing happened. Truth doesn't need applause. About an hour later, my phone lit up again. This time, it wasn't rage. It was desperation. "Leon, please answer. We need to talk. You misunderstood everything. We can explain. Please don't do this to us." I ignored them. Clarity had finally caught up to them. Not because they regretted what they did, but because other people saw it. By morning, the tone shifted even more. "We're family. We can fix this if you just talk to us. Let's put this behind us. Life is too short for grudges." I miss you. Please respond. The flood of "we care" messages hit harder than their rage, but not in the way they intended. It wasn't love. It was fear. Fear that their story wasn't the official one anymore. I didn't text back, because I knew what came next. It always came in the same order: denial, anger, shame, guilt, fake reconciliation attempt. And sure enough, later that night, one final message came through. Abigail, we just want our son back. They had no idea how late that sentiment was, but I knew the storm wasn't over. The guilt trip phase had officially begun. The morning after Ada's party meltdown, I woke up to a message from a number I barely recognized. It was my aunt, one of the quiet ones. I saw some of the emails about Ada's situation back then, she wrote. Then she forwarded screenshots from a family damage control thread Hank started when they were drafting appeal letters. He'd CC'd a few relatives for support. The messages showed payments to SA services, plans to cover Ada's tracks, and lines like, "As long as Leon never finds out." It didn't shock me, but it tightened something in my chest. It wasn't just true. It was documented. They had receipts. They buried them. My aunt added, I didn't know how deep it went. I thought they'd talk to you. I thought you knew. I'm sorry they put you in this spot. It didn't fix anything, but it validated everything. It gave weight to my decision to step away. It made the family talk ultimatum feel even more like a staged trap. I thanked her, told her she didn't owe me anything, and put my phone down. Not 2 minutes later, the guilt storm hit. First came Abigail's long, emotional paragraphs. She must have written them at dawn, thinking sincerity multiplied when stretched to essay length. Leon, family is all you have. You're breaking my heart. You don't understand how hard parenthood is. I love you so much, even if you can't see it. Please don't ruin us over one mistake. One mistake. That line almost made me laugh. Then Hank chimed in with the cold approach. Short sentences meant to sting. After everything we did for you, you owe us respect. We gave you a roof. You gave us betrayal. You never understood sacrifice. I sat there reading them, feeling nothing except mild annoyance. It was a predictable pivot. Anger hadn't worked, so now they were trying guilt, which always worked on Ada, not on me. I didn't respond right away, so they tried another tactic, rewriting history. Abigail wrote, "We never disowned you. You misunderstood. We were hurt, not hateful." Hank added, "We asked you to stay close to support your sister. That's not disowning." I actually did laugh at that one, out loud. These people could look at a tornado ripping through their living room and say, "It was a breeze. You're being dramatic." More messages came. "We didn't choose Ada over you. We tried our best as parents. You're remembering it wrong. You exaggerate everything." They wanted a version of reality where they hadn't cut me off. A version where Ada's failures were tragedies of the universe, not consequences of choices. A version where I was the unstable one who ran away. Then came the reconnect push. Let's talk. Come visit. Let's put this behind us. We miss you. Your sister wants peace. We should heal as a family. None of it was about me. It was about restoring the image they cared about. They wanted the appearance of a united family, not the work of being one. They wanted me to come home so no one could say, "Where's Leon?" at gatherings. They wanted Ada to feel like she wasn't the only one who messed up. They didn't want me. They wanted the version of me that stayed silent. I didn't give them that. I finally responded with one clean message. I'll talk when you're ready to admit what you actually did. No lies, no guilt, no flipping the story. Until then, keep your distance. It was a boundary, not a suggestion. Abigail responded instantly. We didn't do anything, Leon. You're twisting everything. Hank followed. You're being cruel. This is not how a son behaves. I shook my head. They reacted exactly how I expected. Angry that I wasn't bending. Angry that their guilt didn't stick. Angry that for the first time in their lives, I had leverage they couldn't spin into villainy. They kept pushing. We're proud of your success. Truly. Are you really cutting us off forever? You're hurting us more than you know. Leon, I'm sorry. Come home. I need my brother. I didn't reply to any of it. I wasn't going to be manipulated by people who only apologized when cornered. A week passed. The messages slowed down. The tone shifted from frantic to resigned. They realized I wasn't coming back. Not on their terms. I kept working, kept building my life. My career kept climbing. My apartment got nicer. My circle stayed small, but I trusted the people in it. Every once in a while, I thought about the idea of parents. Not my parents, just the concept. It would have been nice to have people who backed me, people who asked about my day, people who didn't treat love like a bargaining chip, But sometimes you have to accept you grew up with people who wanted a puppet, not a son. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad either. I was steady. One night, as I finished reviewing project files for a deadline, I realized something simple and freeing. I built everything I have without them. The stability, the future, the respect. It's mine. And I'll never shrink myself again just to fit inside someone else's delusion. When people like Hank and Abigail lose control, they call it betrayal. When you stop letting them rewrite your life, they call it cruelty. When you finally walk away, they call it abandonment. But sometimes walking away is the most honest thing you can do. They wanted their son back. They never realized they lost him the day they tried to break his future to fix Ada's ego. It's been a few years since everything fell apart, though honestly, it didn't fall apart. It finally fell into place. I've got peace now. No fake apologies, no forced dinners, no pretending blood automatically means loyalty. Ada still lives at home, still searching for the next shortcut. Hank and Abigail post old family photos sometimes, pretending things are fine. I don't reply. I don't hate them. I just don't owe them anything. My life is quiet, focused, and mine. And that's enough. And that's the real end of the story. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. We can't afford to feed you, my mom said, kicking me out at 18. 10 years later, I'm a chef with a Michelin star. They showed up asking for a free table. I sent the server over with the bill. And a note, we reserve the right to refuse service. Sup, Reddit. Got a story that's been eating at me for years. Finally ready to share. Grab some snacks because this one's a ride. I'm going to start from the beginning so you understand just how messed up this situation was. I'm Jake, 28 male, and I grew up in what looked like a normal middle-class family in Ohio. Dad worked as an insurance adjuster. Mom did part-time bookkeeping for local businesses. Nothing fancy, but we weren't hurting either. Or so I thought. My younger sister Natalie, 26 female, was born when I was 2. From that moment on, the family dynamic shifted in ways I didn't understand until much later. Everything became about her. Every decision, every purchase, every family plan revolved around what Natalie wanted or needed. When I was 8 and asked for a new bike because mine was too small, Dad said we couldn't afford it. 2 weeks later, Natalie got a brand new princess-themed bedroom set. Cost about $800, but a $60 bike was too expensive. The pattern continued through childhood. I wore hand-me-downs while Natalie got new clothes every season. I shared a tiny room with storage boxes while she had the master bedroom. Birthdays were the worst. Mine meant a card with $20. Hers meant themed parties with dozens of guests. When I asked why, Mom would say I was being selfish. Your sister needs more attention. You're tough. You can handle things. Translation. I was expected to raise myself while they focused on their precious daughter. High school brought new levels of inequality. Natalie's competitive dance got $2,000 for costumes and travel. The culinary club's $5 membership fee was too much right now. That culinary club changed my life, though. Mr. Peterson saw something in me. He let me stay after school to practice techniques, taught me knife skills, brought in ingredients from his own kitchen. You've got natural instincts, he told me after I'd executed a hollandaise sauce perfectly on my 3rd try. Most students take months. Food made sense in a way nothing else did. In the kitchen, I had control. I could make something from nothing. My parents never came to culinary showcases. When I won 2nd place in a regional cooking competition, Mom glanced at the trophy and asked if I'd cleaned my room. But when Natalie placed 4th in a local dance competition, celebration dinner, relatives invited, social media posts for weeks. Senior year, college applications started. The Culinary Institute had an incredible program 3 hours away. Tuition was about $30,000 a year. I'd been working at a local diner since 16, saved about $8,000. I asked my parents for help with tuition or to co-sign a loan. Dad laughed. We're not spending that kind of money so you can learn to flip burgers, he said. Get a real job. 2 months later, they bought Natalie a brand new Honda Civic for her 16th birthday. $22,000. She hadn't even asked for it. I was still driving the beat-up Toyota they'd bought for $500. But Natalie needed reliable transportation for dance. The inequality became impossible to ignore. In my junior year alone, they spent over $15,000 on Natalie. About $300 on me, only because my work shoes fell apart. When I showed Mom the numbers, she got angry. How dare you track our spending like we're criminals? We give you a roof and food. Your sister has special needs. Special needs? Natalie was perfectly healthy. She just wanted everything and got it. The final breaking point came 3 weeks after I turned 18. I'd been accepted to the Culinary Institute with a partial scholarship covering 40%. I still needed $7,000 for the first year. I'd applied for every grant and loan, worked extra shifts, sold everything I could. I asked my parents for a loan one last time. Not a gift, a loan. I had a payment schedule ready. Dad didn't look at it, just said no. We don't have that kind of money, Mom added. The next day, Natalie announced she wanted a summer dance intensive in New York. 8 weeks of training. Cost? $12,000. Of course, sweetheart, Dad said immediately. We'll make it work. I stood there in disbelief. That's when I snapped. Not yelling or throwing things, just something inside me broke. I realized with complete clarity that they would never choose me, would never support me, would never see me as worth investing in. I don't understand, I said quietly. How do you have $12,000 for Natalie, but not $7,000 for my education? Mom sighed. Natalie's program is an incredible opportunity. Your cooking school is just cooking. It's one of the best culinary institutes in the country. It's a waste of money, Dad cut in. You'll end up in a kitchen for minimum wage. At least Natalie's training might lead somewhere. They believed my passion was worthless compared to whatever Natalie wanted. The next morning, my belongings were in trash bags by the front door. Mom stood with arms crossed. We've decided it's time for you to move out. You're 18, an adult. We need the space and we can't afford to keep feeding you while saving for Natalie's program. Can't afford to feed me? They had $12,000 for dance camp but couldn't afford to feed their son. You're kicking me out? We're helping you become independent, Dad said. You're an adult. Time to stand on your own feet. Natalie watched from the stairs, not saying anything. Not defending me. I loaded my trash bags into my car and drove away. Didn't cry, didn't beg, just left. That was the last time I stepped foot in that house. The first months were brutal. Couldn't afford an apartment on diner wages. Mr. Peterson let me sleep on his couch for a month. His wife made sure I ate real meals. They treated me with more care in 4 weeks than my parents had in years. This is temporary, Mr. Peterson said. You've got talent. Don't let them take that. I deferred my culinary school acceptance for a year and got a second job washing dishes at Meridian, a higher-end restaurant. Between both jobs, I worked 90 hours a week. The head chef, Chef Anton, was an intimidating French guy who ran his kitchen like a military operation. After a month, he pulled me aside. You're wasting talent washing dishes. Tomorrow you start on prep. I became a prep cook, breaking down chickens, dicing vegetables, making stocks. Grunt work, but I was learning. Chef Anton was tough but fair. You have good instincts, but instincts mean nothing without discipline. After 6 months, I rented a room in a house with 3 other guys. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Meanwhile, Natalie's summer intensive happened. My parents posted constant updates about her incredible experience. Not a single mention of their son working 2 jobs to survive. I unfollowed all of them. Needed to focus on my own future. By the time I enrolled at the Culinary Institute, I'd saved enough to cover most of first year. Took minimal loans for the rest. The institute was intense but incredible. Classical French techniques, molecular gastronomy, wine pairing, restaurant management. My instructors recognized my work ethic. While others complained, I thrived. I'd been working in kitchens for over a year already. Second year, I landed an internship at a Michelin-starred restaurant. Chef Linda Park was known for innovative American cuisine. She pushed me harder than anyone, but believed in me. When I suggested a modification to her dish, she had me prepare it and added it to the menu. You've got something. That instinct for flavors, you can't teach that. I graduated at the top of my class. My parents weren't there. Mr. and Mrs. Peterson came instead. Chef Park offered me a line cook position. Most graduates would have killed for that opportunity. The next 4 years were a masterclass in fine dining. I worked every station, learned her operations, how she developed dishes. When she opened a second location, she chose me to run the kitchen. At 24, I became head chef of a restaurant that earned its own Michelin star within a year. The recognition was surreal. Critics mentioned my name. Industry publications did profiles. At 26, I left to open my own place. Finding investors was tough, but having a Michelin star and Chef Park's endorsement opened doors. I pitched my concept, elevated comfort food with seasonal, locally sourced ingredients. Ember opened in a renovated warehouse downtown. Exposed brick, open kitchen, seating for 60. Small menu that changed weekly based on peak ingredients. The first 6 months were brutal. Long hours, constant stress, money problems. But word spread. Bloggers came, critics noticed, reservations filled weeks in advance. Year 2, we earned our first Michelin star. I was 27, head chef and owner of a Michelin-starred restaurant. The kid kicked out at 18 had built something extraordinary. My staff became like family. The sous chef, Christina, had been with me since opening. She understood my vision and kept things running smooth. You built something real here. Not just the food, but the culture. Life was good. Successful restaurant, great team, industry respect, financial security. Everything I'd built was mine. Then my family showed up. It started with a reservation request. The name didn't register at first, but reviewing Saturday's list, something made me look closer. Party of 4 under Mitchell family. Same last name. Hometown area code. Guest notes. Looking forward to the incredible food. Natalie. They'd found me. After 10 years of silence. Christina noticed my expression. Everything okay? I left the reservation active, but noted, do not comp anything. Standard service only. Saturday came and I was more nervous than I'd been in years. This was my restaurant, my kitchen, my rules. They arrived on time. I watched from the kitchen pass as the host seated them. Mom looked older, Dad had gained weight, Natalie was overdressed. Some guy was with her. They looked impressed but tried not to show it. Mom was reading the menu with raised eyebrows, probably at the prices. Tasting menu was $150 per person. A la carte dishes, $35 to $75. Not outrageous for a Michelin-starred restaurant, but definitely not cheap. Christina came beside me. That's them? Yep. The server James came back. Table 12 is asking if the chef does table visits. They requested to speak with you. Of course they did. Tell them I'm busy with service, but I'll try to stop by if there's time. They ordered the tasting menu. All four, $600 before drinks and tax. I treated them like any other guests. Same food, same service, same experience. My team executed every course perfectly. The progression showcased technique and seasonal ingredients. James reported back after each course. They seemed to enjoy the food, though Mom kept asking preparation questions, and Dad commented on portion sizes. Natalie was taking pictures of everything for social media. Of course. After the main course, James returned looking uncomfortable. They're asking again if you can come to the table. Your sister said to tell you it's important family business. Family business. During Saturday service, Christina touched my arm. You don't have to go. I'll go, but only for a minute. I took off my chef's coat, washed my hands, and headed to table 12. As I approached, I could see them all sit up straighter, putting on smiles. Jake! Mom stood up like she was going to hug me. I took a small step back and she stopped, looking hurt. Good evening. I hear you wanted to speak with the chef. The formal tone clearly threw them off. Dad recovered first, extending his hand for a shake. I didn't take it, just kept my hands clasped behind my back, maintaining professional distance. Son, it's so good to see you. The food has been incredible. We had no idea you'd accomplish so much. Thank you. We work hard to maintain our standards. Natalie jumped in, all manufactured enthusiasm. This place is amazing. I've been posting about it and my followers are so impressed. We absolutely had to come try it once we found out this was your restaurant. How did you find out? I asked, genuinely curious about what had prompted this visit after a decade of silence. There was an article in the regional magazine. They did a feature on local chefs, and there was your picture. We recognized you immediately. So they'd seen my success in a magazine and decided to show up. Not because they'd been following my career or were genuinely proud, but because media attention made me relevant enough to acknowledge. The magazine piece was very complimentary, Mom added quickly. Though I told everyone we always knew you had potential. I used to tell people about your cooking talents all the time. The audacity was stunning. They'd literally called my career choice a waste of money, kicked me out of their house, but now they'd always known I had potential and bragged about me to their friends. We were hoping we could talk, Dad said. Maybe after your shift? We have some things we'd like to discuss. Family matters. I'm afraid I have a full evening, multiple seatings, and prep for tomorrow's service. Surely you can spare an hour for your family, Mom said, that edge creeping into her voice. The same tone she'd used when I was a kid, and not cooperating with whatever they wanted. I treat all my guests equally, I replied. And right now, I have other tables that need attention. Please enjoy your dessert course. I'll have James bring it out shortly. I started to walk away, but Natalie called out, Wait, can we at least get a picture? For my social media? I turned back. I'm afraid I don't do that during service. If you'd like, you can take pictures of the restaurant itself, but I don't pose for photos with guests. Company policy. It wasn't actually company policy. I'd done photo ops with guests before, when they were celebrating special occasions or were visiting food enthusiasts I respected. But for them, not a chance. Back in the kitchen, Christina gave me a questioning look. They want to talk about family matters, I said, putting my coat back on. I told them I was busy. Good. They don't deserve your time. The dessert course went out. Chocolate souffle with raspberry coulis and vanilla bean ice cream, one of our signature dishes. James reported they enjoyed it, took more pictures, and asked multiple times if I was coming back to the table. When their check came, Dad apparently looked at it for a long moment before handing over his credit card. $648 with drinks, plus automatic 20% gratuity for parties over 3, bringing the total to nearly $800. That's when things got interesting. James came back to the kitchen looking worried. Table 12 is asking to speak with a manager. They're disputing the check. What's the issue? They expected the meal to be comped. Said since your family, they assumed they wouldn't be charged. The entitlement was unreal. They'd shown up unannounced, made demands on my time during the busiest service of the week, and expected hundreds of dollars of food and wine to be free because we happen to share DNA. Tell them the check is correct and we don't comp meals for anyone. That's our policy. James hesitated, shifting uncomfortably. The dad is being kind of aggressive about it, saying it's disrespectful to charge family members. Other tables are starting to notice. I wiped my hands on a kitchen towel, took off my coat again, and headed back to their table. Several other diners were glancing over, clearly aware something was happening. The energy in the dining room had shifted. When I reached the table, Dad started immediately, voice raised just enough to be heard by nearby tables. Jake, there seems to be some mistake with the bill. We assumed given our relationship that the meal would be complimentary. There's no mistake. The bill is correct. But we're family, Natalie said. Like this simple fact explained everything and overrode all normal business practices. You're guests at my restaurant, I replied calmly, keeping my voice level and professional. All guests pay for their meals. That's how restaurants work. Mom's face flushed red and her voice rose. After everything we did for you, you can't even treat us to one dinner? After we raised you and gave you everything? The words hung in the air. Several nearby tables had definitely heard that. My staff was watching from the kitchen pass, and I could see Christina standing ready in case things escalated further. I thought about all the responses I could give. The trash bags by the door. The $12,000 for Natalie's dance camp versus 0 for me. The, we can't afford to feed you while they planned expensive trips. Being kicked out at 18 and told my dreams were worthless. All the years of taking credit for my work. Instead, I kept it simple and professional. The meal total is $777.40. I'll need a credit card to process payment. This is ridiculous, Dad said, voice rising. We came here to reconnect, to support your business, and you're treating us like strangers? You are strangers. You've been strangers for almost 10 years. And this is a business, not a charity for people who happen to share my last name. I signaled to James, who brought over the payment terminal. The other diners weren't even pretending not to watch anymore. Dad threw down his credit card with force. Fine, but don't expect us to come back. I don't, I said simply. While James processed the payment, the silence at their table was thick. Mom looked like she wanted to say something, but couldn't find words. Natalie was staring at her phone, probably panicking about what to post about this dinner now. The boyfriend looked deeply uncomfortable, like he'd rather be anywhere else. The payment went through. James brought back the receipt for signature. Dad scrawled his name with obvious anger, didn't add any additional tip beyond the automatic gratuity, and stood up. Let's go, he said to the others. They gathered their things. As they stood to leave, Mom looked at me with tears in her eyes. The performance was impressive. I'll give her that. We were so proud when we saw that article. We wanted to see what you'd built. We wanted to be part of your success. You wanted to be part of my success now that it exists. Where were you when I was washing dishes to survive? When I was living on someone's couch? When I graduated at the top of my class? I kept my voice level, professional. You made your choice 10 years ago. I'm just respecting that decision. Natalie found her voice finally. You're being really unfair. We came here to make amends, and you're holding grudges. I'm running a business. If you want to make amends, that's something we can discuss outside of my restaurant, outside of my work hours, after you've had time to think about what you'd actually be apologizing for. But showing up unannounced and expecting free food isn't making amends. It's the same entitled behavior you've always had. They left without another word. I watched them walk out, their exit observed by dozens of diners who'd witnessed at least part of the confrontation. Once they were gone, the restaurant was silent for about 5 seconds. Then someone started clapping. Then another table joined in. Within moments, the entire dining room was applauding. I nodded politely and headed back to the kitchen, where my team had witnessed everything. That was incredible, Christina said. Completely professional, but absolutely savage. The rest of service went smoothly, though I could tell word was spreading. Some guests who'd seen the confrontation went out of their way to compliment the food when they left, adding generous tips and promising to return. After we closed and cleaned up, I finally sat in my office and let the emotions hit. Anger, sadness, relief, pride, everything at once. I'd stood my ground. I'd protected my space. I'd refused to let them back in just because it was convenient for them. Christina knocked on the doorframe. You okay? Yeah, better than okay, actually. They'll probably try to contact you again. She was right. Within an hour, my phone, which I'd silenced during service, showed 17 missed calls, 32 text messages, and multiple voicemails. I didn't check any of them. Not that night. By Monday morning, the situation had escalated in ways I hadn't anticipated. Natalie had posted about the restaurant visit on her social media, but her version of events was creative fiction. According to her story, she and our parents had gone to support my business, only to be publicly humiliated and overcharged for mediocre food. She claimed I'd embarrassed them in front of dozens of people, and that the meal wasn't worth the price. She had thousands of followers, and the post was getting attention. People were commenting in support, saying I sounded like a terrible person, that families should support each other, that my prices were evidence of greed. She'd carefully edited the story to make them look like victims, and me look like a vindictive jerk with an ego problem. What she didn't know was that 3 of the diners from Saturday night were food bloggers with significant followings of their own. By Sunday evening, they'd all posted about witnessing the confrontation, with a very different take than Natalie's version. One blogger, Janet, wrote, "Witnessed something incredible at Ember last night. A family showed up expecting free meal at this Michelin-starred restaurant. Chef/owner handled the entitled behavior with grace and professionalism. The food was exceptional, the atmosphere was perfect, and watching him stand his ground made the evening unforgettable. Full review coming soon." Another blogger posted, "PSA. Just because you're related to a successful chef doesn't mean you're entitled to free food. Watched a family throw a fit at Ember when they had to pay their bill like everyone else. The chef handled it like a pro. The duck was perfection, by the way. Worth every penny." The third blogger went deeper. "There's a story circulating about a chef who mistreated his family at his restaurant. I was there. Here's what actually happened. Family showed up unannounced during busy service, demanded special treatment, expected meal to be comped, and threw a tantrum when they had to pay like everyone else. The chef was nothing but professional. His food was outstanding. Don't believe the spin." The 3 posts got shared and reshared. Other diners from that night chimed in with their observations. Within 24 hours, Natalie's narrative was falling apart under the weight of multiple eyewitness accounts contradicting her version. Food industry people started weighing in too. Other chefs commented about dealing with entitled family members. Restaurant owners shared similar stories. The general consensus was that I'd handled the situation appropriately. By Tuesday, a local news outlet picked up the story and actually called me for comment. I declined to be interviewed, but my publicist, yes, having a Michelin star meant I needed a publicist, issued a simple statement. Chef Jake maintains a policy of treating all guests equally, regardless of personal relationships. Ember does not comp meals for anyone, as this would be unfair to our paying customers who support our business. We appreciate the support we've received from the dining community and look forward to continuing to serve our guests the exceptional food they've come to expect. Professional, diplomatic, and completely shut down the narrative that I'd done something wrong. The calls and texts from my family continued. Dad left voicemails demanding I fix this and stop embarrassing the family. Mom sent long texts about how hurt she was. Natalie messaged saying I'd destroyed her reputation and owed her an apology. I didn't respond to any of it. My attorney sent them a cease and desist letter about the defamatory social media posts. Natalie took down her original post, but left up vague comments about toxic family members and lessons learned about success-changing people. The irony of her saying success changed people was not lost on me. Meanwhile, business at Ember was booming. The controversy actually helped. Reservations were booked solid for 2 months out. People wanted to eat at the restaurant where the chef had stood up to entitled family members. We had to add another seating time to accommodate demand. One evening, about 2 weeks after the incident, an older couple came in for dinner. After their meal, they asked to speak with me. I went to their table expecting another compliment or recipe question. The man extended his hand. "I'm Thomas Mitchell, your father's brother. Your uncle, though we've never met." I shook his hand cautiously. Another family member showing up couldn't be good. "I wanted to come see what you'd built," he continued, and to apologize on behalf of the family. Not everyone agrees with how your parents treated you. His wife nodded. We heard about what happened when you were 18. We were living overseas at the time for Thomas's work. When we came back and found out they'd kicked you out with no support, we were appalled. We tried to find you, Thomas said, but you'd changed your number and your social media profiles were gone. We wanted to help, but didn't know how. I didn't know what to say. I'd assumed the entire extended family was either supportive of my parents or indifferent. The meal was exceptional, his wife continued. You've built something remarkable here. We just wanted you to know that not everyone in the family thinks what they did was acceptable. We talked for a few more minutes. They gave me their contact information and said if I ever wanted to reach out, they'd welcome it. No pressure, no expectations, just an open door. After they left, Christina asked what that was about. Apparently, I have some family members who aren't terrible, I said. Who knew? The next unexpected contact came via email from Mr. Peterson. He'd retired from teaching but had heard about the restaurant and the drama. His email was short. Jake, I always knew you'd do something extraordinary. I'm sorry your parents couldn't see what was obvious to everyone else. You were the best student I ever taught, and not just because of your skills. You had heart. You still do. That meal you served them was worth every penny they paid. I'm proud of you. Peterson. I called him that night and we talked for over an hour. He filled me in on his retirement, his grandkids, his garden. I told him about the restaurant, about Chef Anton and Chef Park, about building something from nothing. You did this yourself, he said. That's what makes it meaningful. Nothing was handed to you. You earned every bit of it. He was right. And that's what my parents could never understand. They thought I should be grateful they'd fed and housed me for 18 years, the bare minimum required by law. They thought throwing me out would teach me a lesson about appreciating them. Instead, it taught me that I was better off without them. 6 months after the restaurant incident, life had reached a new normal. Ember was thriving. We'd expanded our wine program, added a chef's table experience, and hired 2 additional line cooks to handle the volume. I'd started the process of opening a second location. Nothing huge, just a more casual spot, serving elevated comfort food at accessible prices. The planning was exhausting, but exciting. My personal life was good too. I'd been seeing someone I'd met at a food industry event, Rachel, a food photographer who actually understood the restaurant world and didn't mind my schedule. We'd been dating for 3 months and it felt easy in a way relationships never had before. Rachel had asked about my family once early on. I gave her the short version. She listened without judgment and said, "Makes sense that you've built your own family with your team and mentors." She was right. The people at Ember were my family now. We celebrated successes together, supported each other through challenges, and genuinely cared about each other's lives beyond work. Then I got a letter. Not an email or text, an actual handwritten letter forwarded to the restaurant from my parents' attorney. The letter claimed that I owed them compensation for my upbringing and education. They argued that since I'd used skills learned in high school culinary club to build my career, they were entitled to a portion of my success. They wanted $25,000 as repayment for their investment in my future. I read the letter 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. They were actually trying to extort money from me by claiming they deserved credit for Mr. Peterson's culinary club. My attorney laughed when I showed her. This has no legal standing whatsoever. Parents are legally required to provide food, shelter, and education through age 18. They can't bill you for it later, especially when they kicked you out. And claiming ownership of your career because you took a class in high school? That's absurd. She sent a response letter that was professional but firm. The claim had no merit. Any further harassment would result in legal action. They needed to cease all contact immediately. 2 days later, Dad called the restaurant during lunch service. The host put him through to my office before realizing who it was. "Jake, we need to talk about this situation rationally," he began. "The situation where you're trying to extort money from me? It's not extortion. It's fair compensation. We raised you. We fed you. We kept a roof over your head. That has value. You did the bare minimum required by law, then kicked me out at 18 because you couldn't afford to feed me. Remember? That was your exact wording. You couldn't afford to feed me because you needed the money for Natalie's dance camp. We were helping you become independent. You were choosing one child over another, like you'd been doing my entire childhood. And now that I've succeeded despite you, rather than because of you, you want money?" He changed tactics. "Your mother misses you. This conflict is killing her. She cries every day about not having a relationship with her son. She had 18 years to build a relationship with her son. She chose to focus on her daughter instead. And now that her son is successful, suddenly she's devastated? That's not missing me. That's missing access to my success. You've changed, Dad said. Success has made you cold. No, getting kicked out at 18 made me independent. Working 90-hour weeks made me tough. Building a business from nothing made me confident. You're just upset that the son you dismissed as worthless turned out to be worth quite a lot. I hung up. Then I blocked their numbers, their email addresses, and any other way they could contact me directly. The attorney letters continued for a few more weeks, each one more desperate than the last. My lawyer handled all of it. Eventually, they stopped. Either their attorney told them the claim was hopeless, or they ran out of money for legal fees. Through all of this, business kept growing. Food critics from national publications came to review Ember. We maintained our Michelin star and started getting buzz about potentially earning a second. I was invited to compete on a cooking show, one of those reality competition things. Normally, I avoided that kind of publicity, but the exposure would be good for the second location we were planning. The show aired 3 months later. I didn't win, came in third out of 12 chefs, but the experience was valuable and the exposure was incredible. The episode where I talked about opening my restaurant after being kicked out at 18 resonated with a lot of viewers. After the show aired, I got hundreds of messages from people sharing their own stories about unsupportive families, about building success despite obstacles, about choosing to create their own families instead of accepting toxic relationships. One message stood out. It was from a 17-year-old kid in Florida whose parents were telling him his dream of becoming a chef was worthless. He asked if he should give up or keep fighting. I called him. We talked for an hour. I told him about Mr. Peterson, about Chef Anton, about finding people who believed in him even when his family didn't. I told him that his parents' inability to see his potential said nothing about his actual abilities. Are you any good? I asked him. I think so. My home ec teacher says I have real talent. Then find that teacher and ask for help. Ask for mentorship. Ask for guidance. The right people will show up if you're willing to work hard and stay humble. 3 months later, he sent me a video of himself cooking in what looked like a professional kitchen. He'd gotten an after-school job at a local restaurant. The chef there had seen his potential and was training him. Thank you for believing in me when my own parents wouldn't, his message said. You changed my life. That message meant more to me than any Michelin star or positive review. I'd been that kid. I knew what it felt like to have your dreams dismissed. And now I could help others in the same situation. I started a small scholarship fund for culinary students from difficult family situations. Nothing huge, just enough to help with tuition, books, and supplies for students who wanted to pursue cooking but lacked support. We funded it through a portion of profits from Ember and donations from people who'd heard my story. The first recipient was the kid from Florida. He was accepted to culinary school, and our scholarship covered half his first-year tuition. He sent me a picture of himself on his first day, wearing his chef's whites with the biggest smile I'd ever seen. That's what success was supposed to be about. Not revenge, not proving people wrong, but using your position to help others who were where you'd been. It's been almost 10 years since my parents kicked me out with trash bags full of my belongings. 8 years since I opened Ember. The restaurant now has 2 Michelin stars. The second location opened last year and is doing great. The scholarship fund has helped 15 students so far. My parents occasionally try to reach out through distant relatives or old family friends. The message is always some version of wanting to reconnect or being so proud of what I've built. I don't respond. Natalie got married last year. I know because someone sent me a wedding announcement they'd received. I wasn't invited, obviously. Her dance career never took off. Turns out thousands of hours of training don't guarantee success if you don't have the work ethic to match your ambition. Last I heard, she's working in marketing and still living in my hometown. My relationship with Rachel is solid. She gets the restaurant life, understands why I am the way I am, and has become close with my chosen family. The team at Ember, Mr. and Mrs. Peterson, Chef Anton, who occasionally visits from France, Chef Park, who I still consider a mentor. Rachel's family basically adopted me. Her parents are warm and welcoming, interested in my work, proud of my achievements. Her dad tells people, my future son-in-law is a chef with genuine enthusiasm. Her mom asks for cooking tips and actually listens to my answers. Last month was Thanksgiving. Rachel's family invited me to their celebration. Her grandmother made everyone go around the table and say what they were thankful for. When it was my turn, I said I was thankful for everyone who'd believed in me when it mattered, for the opportunities I'd been given to build something meaningful, and for finding a family that chose me rather than being stuck with one I was born into. Rachel squeezed my hand under the table. Her dad raised his glass. To families we choose, he said. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.